Announcements. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Tuesday, March 21st, not 31st. Yesterday was the first day of spring, and looking outside, I just noticed, looking out the window, there's a windmill. When did that's new. See, there's a wind turbine straight ahead.
No.
Come, straight ahead.
Oh, yes.
Where did that come from?
Well, it's in Boston somewhere. I don't know. We'll find out tomorrow.
So, speaking of wind turbines and renewable energy, next week is Climate Week Brookline. And the theme is Turning Point. And there's a whole bunch of events. I'll be going to a few of them. And more information about this is on the Climate Week Brookline website. And I thought I had the address. It's climateweek2017.org for more information. Some pretty exciting events.
I'd just like to add one other thing, which is that the Selectmen's Climate Action Committee, which normally meets on the fourth Monday of every month, we have postponed our meeting until April 3rd in deference to the fact that Climate Weeks will start at the same time when our meeting would be held, and a lot of our members want to go, and et cetera. So we will hold our meeting at the when Climate Week is over.
Okay. And this Sunday, there's a program at the Senior Center at between 3 and 5 called Coming to America, an Educational Forum on Immigrants' Rights. And there's going to be a panel discussion discussing the administration's actions and proposals regarding immigrants and refugees and how they might impact dreamers and others in our community. And this is very timely given what's going on in Washington and locally, as we, the Board of Selectmen, are struggling with crafting a policy in response to some of the goings-on in Washington and how we can react locally. So this is another good event. That's Sunday, 3 to 5 at the Senior Center. Anyone else? Selectman Franco.
I wanted to remind everybody that the Commission for Women are having an event on Thursday. It's their 25th annual Women Who Inspire Us Inspire Us award ceremony. And at that ceremony on Thursday, they're going to honor the Woman of the Year and honor some essay contest winners from our elementary school. So that's this Thursday, the 23rd, starts at 6:30 at Hunneman Hall, just across the street at the main library.
Okay. Any other announcements from anybody? And I don't see anyone signed up for public comments, so let's dive into our calendar. We have the minutes for February 28th and March 7th. I have a few changes.
Yeah, I gave some corrections to Kate.
Okay, so I will move the minutes of February 28th and March 7th as amended, for both of them. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And the chair votes aye. Next item is a question of approving and executing a contract in the amount of $10,000 with World Inc. to conduct an assessment of the town's workforce training capacity for teens and young adults. Andy.
Thank you. Good evening. So if the board recalls, staff was awarded a community compact grant almost 2 years ago now in the best practice area of housing and economic development. This assessment stems from some ongoing work that I've been doing with some high school faculty members over the last couple of years, as well as some ongoing conversations I've been having with some of the different community groups that are involved with youth and to a certain extent involved with youth in getting them trained on basic workforce readiness skills, soft skills, et cetera. And so we've had some discussions with the working group that's been working with me on this project. Had some discussions with some different organizations that might be able to help us with this type of assessment. And World Education, Inc. was actually recommended to us from our contact at Housing and Economic Development for the Community Compact Grant as an organization we might want to talk to about doing a more an assessment at a more granular level than what you might normally do for a project of this nature. So we had some preliminary meetings with a consultant from World Education, Inc. We liked what she had to say, and we decided to move forward with them as our consultant for this project. And so that's basically it. Happy to answer any questions.
Selectman Daley?
Yeah, no, I just want to suggest that you might touch base with the Steps to Success folks who run a summer jobs program for low-income youth.
Yep.
And just, you can get some data and pointers from them as to,
Yep.
what they've been doing.
I had a conversation with their previous director before she left, and their new director is on our list of folks to speak with. We're in the process now of putting together some cohorts, if you will, for our different focus groups to talk to different community stakeholders that are involved with students and teens in job force training and workforce training, excuse me. So
Great.
they're on our list.
Selectman Franco?
In 2 sentences, can you just remind me why we're doing this work, what we're hoping to get out of it, and how it's going to be useful to us in the future?
The town has resources for this. They're fragmented. We could do a better job, and that's the general consensus amongst the folks that manage these resources. And so we're hoping to start knitting them together and create an action plan to do things that we already do better and perhaps expand upon them.
So it's to be more efficient and effective in our existing efforts.
Correct.
Okay, anyone else? I'll move that we approve and execute a contract in the amount of $10,000 with World Inc. to conduct an assessment of the town's workforce training capacity for teens and young adults. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And the chair votes aye. Next item is a little housekeeping item. We're swapping out the Preservation Commission's slot on the Coolidge Corner Study Committee, and Elton Elpron will be replacing Peter Kleiner, who just couldn't do it due to work concerns. Too busy. So I'll move that we appoint Elton Elpron to the Coolidge Corner Study Committee representing the Brookline Preservation Commission. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And the chair votes aye. Next item is a contract to Jamie Construction, Inc. in connection with the Corey Hill Park Improvement Project. Ms. Galantine?
Good
Welcome.
evening, Erin Galantine, Director of Parks and Open Space. So construction season is just about upon us. And before you, we are looking to award and execute a contract for the renovation of Corey Hill Playground. The Park and Recreation Commission conducted a 6-month design review process. We had 4 public meetings and a site visit, and then a final and 5th meeting in October where we had our final recommendation and approval by the commission. Following that, we went into engineering, design bid docs, and out to bid. We feel that we got a really favorable bid and a qualified contractor to do this work. The project itself consists of complete replacement of new play equipment, new accessible walking paths, plantings, seating and picnic areas and plaza space, water play, utility upgrades, fitness equipment, water hydration station, so bottle refill, and
Thank you.
fence repair. So happy to answer any questions about the project or the process.
I note the bids are pretty close together, so that's a good sign. Any comments, questions from the board? Seeing none, I will move that we approve and execute the contract in the amount of 886 to Jamie T. Construction, Inc. in connection with the Corey Hill Park Improvements Project. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you very much.
And the next item is an extra work order for servicing traffic signals with Daigle Electric Company. Mr. Pap Sturgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next three items are mine. They're all extra work orders. I'll start with the first, which is an extra work order in the amount of, it's actually $28,568.50, and it's actually broken down into two different amounts. The first piece is roughly $8,800, and that's for improvements to the traffic signals at the intersection of Beacon Street and Lancaster Terrace, which was part of the bike lane trial that's going on, that pilot on Beacon Street now. We had, in order to synchronize that signal with the Beacon and Marion signal, we had to change out some of the internals on the controller, so that covers that. Daigle, incidentally, is our emergency standby contractor for traffic signals and streetlights. The second piece is roughly $19,700, and that's to repair the wire loop detectors at 4 different locations throughout town that were damaged as part of various road construction projects over the years. The wire loop detectors are important because it allows the signals to be traffic actuated and to respond accordingly to the traffic pattern. So we need to get those repaired.
You should check out the loop actuator at Cypress and Walnut.
Cypress and Walnut, we'll
Yeah.
do that too. Okay.
Any questions from the board? I'll note, Kate, that Daigle is spelled incorrectly in the calendar.
Yeah.
And the reason I mentioned Cypress and Walnut, there was a time where the light timing would change, would be different at night and on weekends, and that's no longer the case. So you'll be sitting there, Sunday morning for the same minute that you're sitting there in the rush hour. So,
We'll look at it.
okay. Okay, so I'll move that we approve extra work order 3 in connection with the contract for servicing traffic signals and related work with Daigle Electric in the amount of $28,568.50. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Next item is another extra work order for snow plowing with the Alessandro Corporation in the amount of $460,000.
Yes, the good news is we don't see any more snow on the horizon, at least not in the next
We see him in the
7 to
gutters.
10 days. The bad news is you had to cancel your meeting last week because we had a pretty bad snowstorm. Luckily, last week, we didn't get hit with the snow amounts that they were predicting. They were forecasting 18 inches. We got
Right.
probably half that, but it was extremely heavy, extremely wet, extremely difficult to plow. And it was well-suited to do what we did by putting the emergency snow ban in force for that day and to canceling a lot of the activities, because otherwise we just would have never got caught up on our streets. So the bad news now is that we need to approve extra work order number 5 for a substantial amount of money. The original contract was renewed in September of 2016 for D'Alessandro. He is our prime equipment rental contract for snow. You will recall that any time we get snow depths of 4 inches or greater, we generally bring in contractor equipment to augment our own forces. The original contract was only for $76,900, and that's to synchronize with the snow and ice control budget that you approve every year. Realizing that more than likely, in most cases, we will have to do extra work orders as we go through the year. This is the first extra work order, probably be the only extra work order for this contract this year. The $460,000 right now is meant to cover a $315,000 deficit in snow and ice control costs. Expected expenses, we haven't got the bill yet for last week, but about $120,000 just for last week's storm, which included a 1 8-hour shift of snow removal in commercial areas, and a projected cushion of about $25,000 just to get us through the rest of the season should we need to do that. So just as a point of information, we track all of our snow and ice control costs as they relate to depth of snow to try to get a cost per inch, and we track that just as a marker to see how we're doing from year to year. As an example, in 2 years ago, in the big winter of 2015, we had 106 inches of snow. We had a significant deficit that year, and the per inch cost was about $34,000 per inch to fight that snow. This year, we've had roughly half of that, 56 inches of snow, believe it or not. A normal year for us is anywhere from 40 to 45 inches of snow. We've had 56 inches. As of right now, we are running a deficit of about $1.5 million in snow and ice costs, but that comes out to roughly the same amount per inch that we dealt with 2 years ago. It's about $35,000 per inch. We've had to incur significant costs this year for salt. Salt prices did go up slightly, but we found we used a lot more salt this year. We've had 15 events. We refer to a snowstorm as an event. Out of those 15 events, 8 of them were plowable. The other 7 were treating road surfaces, and we use a lot of salt, of course, when we have to do that. So a lot of expenditures for salt this year.
Selectman Daley.
Yeah, so, Mr. Kleckner, I notice this is not being done in conjunction with a reserve fund transfer request. So this is being done under you having signed that we can overrun the budget?
Yes, but we still have to true up, so we will be going for reserve fund transfer.
Okay, that's what
But
I was.
we
Yes.
still have to find the money. It's just really the process of allowing us to spend until we do that. And now that resides with me as opposed to the advisory committee, or the finance committee, that's all.
Okay,
I don't
still have
generally,
to
yeah, I
find
don't
money.
generally come back until May, the end of May, to reconcile the snow and ice budget, because at that time, we transfer a lot of internal funds to cover some of the deficit from Public Works. The difference would come out of the reserve fund, but that would be done down the road a bit.
okay. It's just fairly large sum. I wondered exactly how it was getting paid.
Selectman Franco.
So this doesn't directly relate to snow and ice, but bear with me for 1 second. We've had a lot of snow over the past 3 seasons. You mentioned that in 2 winters ago, it was 108 some odd inches. We got off last winter pretty easily, and now we're above average. We're above the 40 to 45 that you said was normal. I'm wondering how our roads are faring. Are we expecting that the asphalt is going to fail faster than it would during a normal 3-year or few-year span because we're using more salt, we're plowing more, they're getting beat up more? Is that sort of a bill that we're going to have to deal with 10 years into the future?
It definitely takes a toll on our roads, there's no question about it. Just the plowing operation alone takes a toll, although we attempt to use rubber scraper edges whenever we can, but it's not always practical. We have a pavement management system that you're aware of, and I'm sure that as a result of the severe winters, we'll probably see a downtick in those pavement condition indexes over the next 5 to 10 years. But at the same time, we're trying to ramp up our road reconstruction program as well, complete streets aside, which may tend to slow that down a bit. But yeah, it's a legitimate concern.
And do you feel like the technology that's used, the asphalt mix, is better able to withstand winter conditions now, or is this one area where innovation hasn't blossomed?
Unfortunately, in my own opinion, the asphalt that we buy today is not the same quality as the asphalt we've bought in years past. There's a lot more recycled materials in it, tends to degrade the quality of the asphalt a bit. So I'm not convinced that we get the same longevity out of our asphalt pavements now that we did 20 years ago.
Selectman Green.
Yeah, one question related to the general issue of snow removal. I get, not a lot, but a couple questions every once in a while about the removal of the snow that's plowed onto the side of the road. Do we have any ability to take that snow out, especially along, for example, Beacon Street?
We do.
Where it creates I think, a hazard
Well,
early on.
we actually do that, and we did that this past storm. We use our new snow machines that we've had now for 2 years, believe it or not. And last week, after the storm was done and we completed our normal cleanup, we took those machines with trucks and we call it running the gutters. We ran the gutter line on Beacon Street in its entirety, most of the sections. There were a few sections that we had to skip, but...
Are you able to do the MBTA?
The parking areas?
Well, the parking areas as well as the MBTA platforms.
We don't do the platforms. The MBTA does that.
That's where I was just
Yeah.
seeing.
No, actually, they were out there during the storm last week. I saw them on several occasions, but they're responsible for clearing their own platforms. We do clear the parking reservations along Beacon Street that are in the median. We do clear those. We do attempt to clear as much snow as we can from commercial areas and main arteries, especially if there's a very high snowbank. We will run the gutter and clear it right to the gutter line. In a lot of cases, that's to help out with folks trying to get to parking meters as well.
So how's the snow beast working out?
Excellent. We have two of them, as you know. And I've told you this before, but when we do a normal snow removal operation conventionally, it costs about $10,000 per hour to do that type of operation. We can do in one 8-hour shift with those machines what used to take us 3 8-hour shifts in the past. So if we save 2 8-hour shifts, we're saving the cost of one of those machines every time. So those machines have already paid for themselves in avoided costs.
So why don't we get them sooner?
They weren't as
Didn't
good
exist, did they?
before as they are now, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also had to argue a lot to get them. As you know, I'm stepping down from the board soon, and I think a fitting tribute might be my name stenciled onto one of those machines.
Nancy Daly is a beast.
That's right.
Yeah, Mr. Kleckner said they'll let you drive one.
Yeah, right.
How about if I paint one of them pink?
So Selectman Green inspired me to ask another question. I have gotten a number of calls and emails over the past month about the issue of people shoveling out their driveway or their sidewalk, and then overnight when the DPW comes and runs the curb to try and free up space and allow for the safe passage of vehicles and emergency vehicles in particular, sidewalks are again covered. It's my understanding that there is sympathy from the DPW about that, but the plows need to travel at a certain speed, and a function of that is kicking up snow. Am I correct, or is there some way to avoid?
We're very cognizant of that problem. We instruct our drivers to do two things for every single storm. Number one, we try to plow curb to curb as soon as possible so that we're pushing back the greatest volumes of snow early on to get it to the curb line. Depending on the density of the snow, light fluffy snow will generally stay where you put it. Heavy wet snow will roll off the blade in chunks and may not stay where you put it. We do encourage our drivers, particularly when they're in residential areas, to go as slow as practical. There is a certain cutoff speed that if you go too slow, you're not very effective when you're plowing the road. So we do instruct them to go as slow as possible. But that's not always practical either. This past storm was particularly difficult because the snow was very heavy and wet, and it was coming off the blade in boulders. And when it does that, it rolls, and it did roll onto a lot of the sidewalks. If any of you have heard my calls that I make relative to snow emergencies, I always make a point of saying in the call to be cognizant of the fact that the Department of Public Works will be plowing back curb to curb, for the duration of the storm. So if there's any way to avoid clearing your sidewalk or driveway during the, in the middle of the storm, I know that's not always possible, but be cognizant of the fact that we will be coming back at some point to clearing it. A mistake a lot of people make is when you do shovel your driveway and your driveway apron out. Now, just think of the physics of this. If you plow the snow, to the up street side of your driveway and pile it there and not on the down street side of the driveway, when the plow comes along, that's the less snow that he's going to pick up and push back into your driveway. So, there are ways to mitigate some of that. It's difficult at best. We do try to caution our drivers, though, to realize that, sometimes the DPW and the residents are at odds in terms of their tasks, and we have to accomplish it.
Well, and I think in this, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this particular storm was really difficult because the stuff was so heavy and icy and gross.
Yes,
And,
it was.
and, if the homeowner didn't get out there and attempt to get it off the sidewalk at least halfway through, then they were dealing with rocks, literally, that they couldn't move. So I think it was a tough situation.
It was. Believe me, if we had the resources, I would like nothing better than to be able to plow every sidewalk in town.
would be
But we
great.
don't have that ability, so.
Okay, so I'll move that we approve the extra work order number 5 in connection with the snow plowing and ice control contract with D'Alessandro Corporation in the amount of $460,000. 460, yeah, okay, I said that right. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. One more, eh?
Yes.
This is an extra work order in connection with the disposal of leaves and related work with LaRusso Corporation in the amount of $15,000.
Yes, this contract is for that very purpose, for disposing of leaves and compostable materials that we pick up and store at our transfer station on Newton Street. Once we deposit it there, we have a contractor, in this case LaRusso Corporation, who comes in and removes the material from our yard and then takes it to his own yard and processes it at that point. The contract for that is about $78,000 or so. This particular extra work order, we've had a very large accumulation of material that's been lingering up there over the winter, and it's time to get rid of it now before it starts presenting other types of problems like odor. So we want to get it out of there now.
Okay, any questions, comments on this item? I'll move that we approve the extra work order number 1 in connection with the contract for disposing of leaves and related work with LaRusso Corporation in the amount of $15,000. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next item is a question of accepting 4 donations totaling $315 to the Brookline Commission for the Arts to provide funding for the Poet Laureate program.
Mr. Chairman, in the absence of my staff who's down with the advisory committee, I'll take this. We received multiple donations for this purpose of funding the Poet Laureate program. We received 3,100 donations, each from Ilana Lescoyer, Amy Emmett, and Betsy Fallenthal, and David Kirshner. And one $15 donation was made by 4 devotion school students, and I want to especially acknowledge that. I'll mention their first names: Charlie, Erica, Juliet, and Olivia, who wanted to support the Brookline Commission for the Arts. And so we enthusiastically recommend acceptance of these generous donations.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'll move that we accept these donations in the amount of $315 to the Brookline Commission for the Arts to provide funding for the Poet Laureate Program. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And we have a bunch of temporary wine and beverage licenses, and I'll move them in omnibus fashion. All the applications appear to be in order and have been reviewed by the police department, who actually is one at the end that's pending police approval. But I'll note that in the motion. So I'll move first that we grant temporary wine and malt alcoholic beverage license to Art Barn Community Theater for a gala event to be held on Saturday, March 25th from 6:30 to 9 p.m. at 50 Goddard Avenue, and that's Hellenic College. I'll also move that we grant a temporary wine and malt alcoholic beverage license to Vine Ripe Grill for a baby shower to be held on Sunday, March 26th from 2 to 6 at 1281 West Roxbury Parkway. Also move that we grant a permit to serve alcoholic beverages on town property, non-sales all kinds, to Lars Anderson Auto Museum for a cocktail reception on Wednesday, March 22nd from 7:30 to midnight at 15 Newton Street. I'll also move that we grant 2 temporary all-kind alcoholic beverage sales licenses to Pine Manor College at 400 Heath Street as follows: for a birthday party to be held on Friday, March 24th from 6:30 to 11, and for a B'nai Mitzvah to be held on Saturday, April 1st from 7 to 11. And I'll also move that we grant a temporary wine and malt beverage license to Pine Manor College for a memorial service to be held on Thursday, March 23rd from 11:30 a.m. to 2 p.m., 400 Heath Street, and that one is pending police approval. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Moving on to our main calendar, we have 2 library positions to fill. And first is a library assistant and a reference librarian. Ms. Slyman, how are you?
Hi, good. Good evening. Sarah Slyman, Library Director. Here to request that you approve the filling of 2 vacant full-time library positions, a library assistant 3 at the Putterham location, and a reference librarian 2 at the main location.
Questions, comments? Want to do your thing?
Well, you know what my thing is. I'm looking for,
He wants to know if you're going to seek the widest possible array of applicants.
I absolutely am. In the librarian positions, we usually expand upon HR's recommendations to include the Black Librarians Caucus of the American Library Association, the Chinese American Library Association, and the job list at the master job list at the American Library Association. So that is available, all 3 of those nationally, both in paper and online.
what I was looking for is a chart of current employees of the town, including the Library Association. So give me a sense of, your current, the diversity of your current staffing. I don't have it with me right now.
I didn't bring it with me either, but last time I reported to you, we were exceeding the diversity represented by the population of Brookline, based only on racial diversity, and we were far exceeding the available the representative racial diversity of the American Library Association. Right. We also are very well represented at the library staff by women and the LGBTQ plus populations.
Yeah, actually, I have my chart now, and your numbers do stand out in the town for the diversity, both racial as well as the other ones you mentioned. So.
I think it's since I've made those for you, and you're going to see me again in 2 weeks, so I'll update them for you for that meeting. We have, I believe, increased our diversity fairly significantly for a staff of 94 since I did up the stats for you last time.
Okay. Any other questions or comments I will therefore move that we authorize the filling of the following vacancies in the library department. Library Assistant 3 and Reference Librarian 2. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you. Y'all have a good night.
You too. Good luck. Okay, I'm going to move on to the budget. We noticed it for 7 o'clock, but it's not a public hearing, and those times are approximate, so I'm going to forge ahead. And the first budget up is Council on Aging. Ms. Doback, welcome.
Thank you. Ruth Ann Dobeck, Director of the Brookline Council on Aging and Senior Center. Very happy to present the Council on Aging budget as a level services budget for FY18. And as we know, it takes the hard work and dedication of our volunteers who also make this budget happen and be responsible, as well as addressing the diverse needs of our senior community. So with that, I would like to acknowledge our Budget Committee, which is here this evening, William Wong, Roberta Winitzer, our Chair, Yolanda Rodriguez, and the Administrative Assistant, Sonia Wong, who worked so diligently to prepare. Again, what I always say to the board and the community is that we are 4 legs on a chair of stability for funding. And unfortunately, in my career, those 4 legs are never all stable. But if we can get 3 out of the 4, we're in good shape. And once again, the leg that this year looks the weakest, is no surprise, is the federal funding. The town's support remains very stable and supportive of the seniors. The state has come through in the last years addressing the needs and has increased their formula grant across the Commonwealth. And this year we're receiving $10 per senior. So in Brookline, with our senior population of 10,716, we are receiving about $108,000 in state funds, which is, again, going all to personnel. And then our private fundraising has done very well over the years and continues to be strong. Again, the town is giving us about 70% of our operating budget, and we're increasing that with private funding. This last year, we were very lucky to have Nancy Daly the year before for Dancing with the Stars, and was able to fund our respite program. And that got so much acknowledgement that Cynthia Cream, our state legislative, has put in a line item for the state to continue that respite program. Unfortunately, it did make the governor's 9C cuts, so we weren't able to see that money in 17, but she is fighting for us to see increased fundings for a respite program in 18. Other private funding this year, our board president, Betsy Pollock, followed in Nancy's dancing footsteps and also did a fundraiser for Dancing with the Stars and Rotary. And she is focused on increased transportation options for seniors. And I should use this opportunity to say that transportation always comes out number 1 or number 2 on a needs assessment. Springwell, our area agency on aging, recently did their latest needs assessment, and the need for transportation was number 1. And they're also stressing that transportation not just be used for medical appointments. Oftentimes, for a medical appointment, there are alternatives, but increasingly, seniors need transportation options for social events, to keep them connected in the community, and also to do other errands. So with that, we are starting a subsidized program with a rideshare program. the one that has done the most work with seniors and healthcare is Lyft. And we're going to be able to provide a limited pilot program to provide increased transportation in FY18. At, again, no cost to the town. So that's rather exciting to extend our transportation options. Again, the fear is what's going to happen with our federal government. If anyone has been hearing the news over the last couple days, you may have heard that things like Meals on Wheels experienced a major cut.
Elimination.
Thank you. Under the point that it doesn't help anybody.
That's Trump.
So there's some grave concerns, and I bring it up because, again, what happens on the federal level we'll have to respond to on some way. So when you have a president who submits a budget that says Meals on Wheels is eliminated and no one can see the good that it does, it has some concerns. We receive CDBG funds as the town, and the Council on Aging has depended on that CDBG funds for our transportation program known as BETS. And again, one of the things that I've been bringing to the public's attention is when you level fund a program such as the BETS program, you're actually, after inflation and tax increases, you're actually cutting the program. And that's where we currently are with that transportation program. So if CDBG also is either eliminated or cut, there's going to be some concerns for our budget on that. Otherwise, you know, the senior center programs are prospering. We are full all day. You know, there are times that you cannot find a room at the senior center to book an event. Monday through Friday, most days until about 3 or 4. And then there's some space availability as the afternoon progresses. But we're averaging now about 15 various programs a day and providing essential services to our most needy seniors. Again, everything from the SNAP food stamps program, fuel assistance, SHINE, which is Medicare, Medigap counseling, and services to families who are dealing with seniors and their counseling issues and looking for housing. Then there are, again, a variety of programs from exercise to cultural that are all thriving, again, thanks mostly to the very strong cadre of volunteers that we have. The volunteers are essential to our operation. We would not be able to provide programming or services without the dedication and talent that we are able to really draw on in this community. We have expanded some program into the evenings and weekends, and again, that would be a long-term goal to do even more of that. We hear from the seniors, again, that it is often a weekend that is very lonely, and as we are addressing the needs of baby boomers and younger seniors, some of the evening programs have become more in demand. We have set out that, similar to schools who are talking about projecting into the future with, you know, your kindergarten class or preschool, that there needs to be a similar discussion around town of senior needs. And so this evening I just want to share a couple of the statistics from the Administration on Aging that I think will serve us as we think about our future. And that is, think about 2030. I remember when I was in school when they were talking about 2030 as being the year of the real wave for senior services, it seemed like science fiction. But I would remind people that 2030 is closer than the year 2000. And we all know how quick 2000 was till now. So it is only 13 years away and 12 years by our budgeting. And the projection is that we will see an increase of 30% of the senior population in the next decade. So for Brookline, as we have 10,000 seniors, we will see an increase of 3,000 seniors in our community. And I think the number that is most striking is that the 85 and over population is expected to triple in the next couple of years, as we talk going out to or decade, as I should say. So those who are here in the community will certainly be staying even longer, and with that, some real increased needs. The final statistic, which is if you reach the age of 65 and your retirement, you can expect a life expectancy of at least about 20 years on average. So again, the population to really watch for are the over 85. And so again, we want to educate the entire community that similar to a school population that is ever increasing, that the senior population is also one that needs some attention because it too is increasing and will have further demands on us. As always, we will take questions, comments.
Yes, Selectman Daley.
Well, I just want to add a couple things. First, I do want to say what a tremendous job the volunteers at the Senior Center do. And I know they used to get Community Development Block Grant money for a senior jobs program, which helped with many of those volunteers. And then the Community Development Block Grant administrators decided that program wasn't appropriate for their funding anymore, so they don't get that. They are down in this latest recommendation for funding for this program, which helps provide for the subsidized taxi fares. And you can imagine in this weather where it's icy on the sidewalks, that even walking from the T down to the senior center can be very treacherous, and so being able to take some form of transportation right to the door, whether it's the bus that the senior center runs or one of these subsidized taxi fares or Lyft or whatever it might be, is tremendously important for many seniors in enabling them to get out. I got to say, I just find what the Republicans in Washington are doing is appalling. I mean, cutting Meals on Wheels out completely, there's just no excuse for that. The Republican health care bill is going to make health care much more expensive for those seniors who are not yet on Medicare. The proposal is to completely cut the CDBG money, which not only affects the subsidized taxi program, but they really do need to expand the senior center, and we could use CDBG money for some of that potentially, I believe. But there may be no CDBG money, and it also tremendously affects Brookline Community Mental Health. Steps to Success, our affordable housing program in town. So the whole thing I find just outrageous. And really almost, an attack on seniors on many fronts. All of these proposals, or a disproportionate number of proposals, have a very negative impact on seniors. And I would like this board to send a letter to our congressional delegation indicating how very important the Meals on Wheels program and the Community Development Block Grant Money program is to our town, to our seniors. And as I said, I do think we need to start thinking about some expansion at the senior center. They are a roaring success, and it means the place is full all the time. which is great, but, it's people are hitting elbows now to try to find, a classroom space or a meeting space or whatever, so, and we are having, with some of the projects in the area, like the Jewish Community Housing for the Elderly at KI, not too far away, and I believe the Hebrew Senior Life people who are right behind them have some expansion thoughts in mind as well. So we have more seniors in the neighborhood, and I think the success of the senior center has also spread around town, not just for those who are right at these nearby projects, but I even hear from people when I'm at the meetings there about their efforts to get from South Brookline over to the senior center. So the senior bus, the senior center programs are very important in this town, and I want to thank Ruth Ann and Roberta and all your board members who are here for a tremendous job that you do.
Selectman Franco.
I will join Selectman Daley in applauding you, Ruth Ann, and the entire team for the hard work that you do. I think it's fair to say that the senior center is a one-stop shop for seniors, and there's always a lot going on there. Every time I have opportunity to go in, I am overwhelmed by the amount of activity and vitality and energy in the space. I have spent a lot of time over the past couple of months chairing a committee, at the wisdom of my colleagues on this board, looking at senior property tax levels. And I know that you've got, there's some people in the audience who put forward a proposal, who I owe a phone call to, but it's been the topic of some interest. And I know at the Senior Center, you have a number of programs that are either means tested or that provide some property tax relief to seniors in town. I'm wondering anecdotally if you can give me some indication of if seniors, by and large, are struggling with property taxes, particularly as we look over the next couple of years when we're seriously contemplating and will put on the ballot debt exclusions for some school expansion and operating override for some operational needs in the school department and possibly even on the town side.
Yeah, and I applaud you for taking on the chair of that important committee. When the Warren article was proposed, we had looked with the Brookline Can Livable Communities of saying where is it that we can perhaps be even more creative than we currently are doing to provide property tax relief. The important program that is by far the largest that seniors take part in is the tax work-off. But again, that's relatively limited in what their relief that they receive. But it is tremendously important to seniors to being able to stay in their homes. And, as this board has increased that to 30 slots, it's made a world of difference, and town meeting has increased the amount that seniors now receive from that tax work-off. And we know that seniors struggle. I don't have a statistic on property owners, but there was something that came out of UMass Gerontology that we've been also sending around that in Massachusetts, 6 out of 10 single seniors are in financial distress, and 3 out of 10 couples are experiencing financial insecurity. And the number one reason cited by that is the Massachusetts and Greater Boston high cost of housing. So again, it's impacting not just the property tax owners, but I think that's where Brookline deserves so much credit, as we were the first municipality to start something for our renters. And we now have 10 slots through, so it's very similar, again, to what we're providing for the people who do tax work-off, that if you're a renter, you can also receive $1,000 to help with rent. So again, what I hear from the seniors is we want to pay our fair share, We are not looking to be in conflict with schools. The seniors in this community have always prided themselves that they were not, this is unlike many municipalities where seniors will revolt about supporting schools. In Brookline, the schools have always been near and dear to their heart, but they do say, please think about us and give us some relief. I hope that answers.
It does, yeah, thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out about the seniors and the relationship to the schools, because many years ago, when I was on the school committee, we did work with seniors, and one example is the senior center. A lot of the people who were involved in the schools were instrumental in pushing the construction and getting the money for the senior center in its current capacity. So I'm thrilled about the fact that we have people who say, okay, I'm not just looking out for my interests, I'm looking out for everybody in the community's interests. And I think the school people do that as well as the seniors, and I too am proud of them for that. And thank you for your leadership in that way.
It's something, again, that we're particularly proud in Brookline. And one of the jokes is that a wonderful place for active educators and school committee members to join after their school committee years of retirement is on the nonprofit. The Brookline Multi-Service Center has had the late, great Dr. Sperber as part of our board, Marcia Heist, who was also a school committee member, who just recently passed away, and Kevin Lang is still very active on our finance committee. So not only is schools and the seniors very important, it is another place that people who are very active in the school committee continue their involvement in Brookline.
Anything else? Okay, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask if we can take a vote on sending a letter in support of community development block grant? And
Well, I'm certainly in favor of the idea. I think maybe we ought to have a piece of paper in front of us, and
Okay.
so why don't we
Yeah.
develop one? And,
Okay.
and
I will draft something and,
And we'll do it next week.
all right, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, okay. I think it's this weekend. Okay. Next budget up is the Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations. Dr. Gelano, welcome. Tell us about what's going on in your department.
Good evening. Lloyd Gelano, Chief Diversity Officer and Director of the Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk tonight about the budget and our program. Before we start, I'd like to sort of do a shout out to my staff, Chris Chanya-Sulkett, who's also a curator. And Caitlin Haynes, our ADA coordinator. I don't know if folks have formally met her, but she's here this evening with us tonight. Before I get started, I'd like to sort of talk about the basic philosophy of our office, and there's a couple of points I'd like to make. Number one is, I think our mission within is to increase community awareness of the various cultural groups that exist in Brookline and recognizing their contributions to the Brookline and American way of life. The second is assisting groups to recognize and value their historic significance to Brookline and American life. The third, increase opportunities for inclusivity for marginalized populations. And four, foster empowerment for all Brookline residents by encouraging civic and community engagement. And five, lastly, is promoting self-advocacy. And the question is, how do you go about doing that? Well, you have to meet with people. You have to be out in the community, you have to be listening to them and actually supporting some of their efforts. And I think the office, the commission, and the staff here do a tremendous job in doing that. I like to call it, what we do is positive programming, and all the research everyone I talked to, all the consultants said that's the way to go. They smile when we hear that we're doing this stuff. They want to be involved. We have various other communities asking us to join and partner with them to do programming like we do here in Brookline. So that being said, it was noted to me by the advisory committee that we actually engaged in, I believe, 23 different activities and programs over the last year. It's hard to believe we are an department of 3 people, and we do rely on interns, but again, we couldn't do all that work alone. It had to come from the community, and I just want to keep stressing that tonight. It's community, community, community. So that being said, the office continued its efforts to bring community programs to Brookline. The office successfully launched a salary negotiating workshop series for women. It also offered educational programs on student mental health, and it participated in several informational programs at various public housing sites. Again, that's making people aware of what programs exist in Brookline, not only in our department, but also other departments as well. The office provided staff to the Commission for the Disabled, the Women's Commission, Commission for Disabilities, the Women's Commission, the Brookline Commission for Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations, the Holocaust Witness Projects Committee, and the MLK Committee. It also continued its collaboration with Hidden Brookline Committee and the Age Friendly Committee. Some highlights of these collaborations include organizing how ADA variances are processed via the Commission for the Disabled to enable faster responses to various requests. The office continued management of the ramp lending program and the adaptive technology grant program. I would say that the adaptive technology grant program, we didn't see very much use of that. The ramp program is sort of killing itself, meaning that when people find that they're relatively inexpensive, they go out and buy them themselves. So we see less use of them at this point. The office provided logistical support and consultation to the process of preserving the Holocaust witness accounts that will be used in future programs and activities. That is still something that we're doing, but that was really important for us to sort of preserve those tapes. They were degrading in my office, and it was just not a good thing to be happening. In its collaboration with Hidden Brookline, it placed a plaque at the former home of Roland Hayes in recognition of his contributions, not only his musical contributions, but his civil rights efforts. The office provided leadership and staffing to the Women's Commission Dress for Success program, the annual Kids Clothing Drive, and the Women's Commission for and the Women's Who Inspire Us event, which is coming up. The office assisted in the development of the complaint process for the Brookline Commission for Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations. In addition, the office collaborated on the revision of the town's EEO policy and the town's anti-harassment sexual harassment policy. The office also provided consultation and logistical support to the annual Dr. Martin Luther King celebration and for the Holocaust Witness Project events, which was happened last month. Both of these events attended with the Coolidge Corner, and we're actually establishing a nice relationship with them for future projects. I can go on, but I think that you get a sense that what we do, we have a couple of events that we're looking forward to coming up this spring. One of them is the Walk a Mile event against domestic violence. We're also working with the police chief, or I should say police chiefs, to develop a community relations forum that's going to be held at Pine Manor. I should also say we actually reestablished a connection with Pine Manor, and we'll hopefully do a lot more programming with them in the future. So we're doing a lot, and we're continuing to do a lot, and again, the focus will be on community events, and and I know I see a lot of the board members actually attend a lot of the programs, and that's really nice to see folks out there. I think one of the things that sort of highlights what we're about was an event that happened about 3 weeks ago, the pre-spring fling that Sean Janes, one of the commissioners, sort of organized and put together, where we brought the police department and the community together for a fun afternoon of food and a movie, and it gave the police officers an opportunity to show the services that they provide and what they do. and it served as an opportunity to stimulate interest in joining the police force. So, and I think one of the phrases I heard someone say was, it was really nice to see police officers smile, and, you know, that's it. I mean, that's it. So we're really happy in the direction that we're going. We're still young, and we're still putting some steps into place, but I do think we're moving in the right direction.
Selectman Daley.
Yeah, I noticed on your performance and workload indicators that on the Americans with Disabilities Act complaints, you'd had 3 the last couple years, but you're anticipating 15 in the upcoming year. What's that all about?
It's about being more present, and I think that under the new leadership and the way the mechanisms are in place and the advertising it, we're going to get probably more, most likely towards sidewalk issues and snow removal. So that's more what that's about. People will know more that they can come to us.
And what are fire fund referrals?
It's a Beacon Street Fire Fund. A couple of years ago, remember that there was a fund that was created to help people who've been through some kind of catastrophic event like that. And it's supported through Brookline Community Foundation. And what we do is, once we become aware of places that displaced individuals due to disaster, we sort of organize and we try to find what the needs are, basic needs are, and we try to support them.
And I just do want to ask, are any of your programs potentially impacted by the cuts that have been recommended by the Trump administration?
In as much as it affects the overall town budget, the answer would be no.
Good.
What could be impacted is a way of delivering our assistance with health insurance. We still carry that with us. We are all trained as ACA counselors, and we can help people sign up for health insurance. So that may change.
Selectman Green.
Yeah, I just want to add on to something you said in the beginning. Speaking of that guy down in Washington, while increasing the military budget exponentially, he's cutting the State Department. And I see that as sort of similar to the value that the Commission and your department plays in this town. By cutting State Department budget, you don't have the ability to use soft diplomacy to sort of negotiate with your enemies, negotiate with your friends, and create a more peaceful world. The Commission and your department serves a similar function in that, we have a very diverse community, racially to some degree, but economically, in terms of ethnic groups, et cetera, and that can potentially create a whole lot of tensions, a lot of difficulties. And the Commission, through its programs, provides an opportunity to help those communities not live together with as much friction as it would otherwise be the case. And more importantly, in my view, to enable the community to take advantage of the skills, the knowledge, the experience, the history, the culinary contributions of all these different communities. So, I mean, that's maybe a difficult comparison between the State Department and the Commission, but I think it does work because, to the extent that we don't work with people and using those soft tools that the State Department or the Commission has, we're forced to use other ways to maintain a peaceful, productive community. So I'd like to just mention that is something I think your department and the Commission plays a major important role in.
Selectman Heller.
No,
Sorry. Selectman Franco.
Dr. Delano, can you talk a little bit about the Brookline Together Ambassadors Program, which I think you launched in Brookline Day in 2016?
That's actually a collaboration. We were part of that mission to, we're looking how to get Brookline folks to know who they work for and what they can do for them. And, this was sort of the result of that sort of notion. And so it was driven by several different people, including Parks and Recreation as well. Actually, Chris Chanisloke took the lead on that as well. And it was decided that this is something that we'll try to do at Brookline Day. It was met with a lot of success. We actually had people who wanted to join in, and we're looking to expand that. One of the things actually I know Ruth Ann didn't mention was, I live in Newton now, and I noticed when I go to Town Hall, there's a greeter at the door and I really like that, who would tell you where to go. It's a nice face to have. And part of that program will be hopefully having someone who could sit there either as a volunteer or payment in lieu of taxes type of thing that I think Ruth Ann does with some of the senior folks. And so those are the type of things that we want to do. They're going to be more present at more community events. So again, just letting people know who we are, putting names with faces, humanizing all of us. So it's not, it's easy to yell at a picture or a name, but it's really hard to yell at someone face to face. And so that's what we're looking to do.
Anyone else?
I'd like to give a shout out to your staff. Chris and Caitlin are incredible in terms of what they do and the level of thinking about the issues that they bring to all the things that they do. So at least in my experience, you're so lucky to have incredible people on your
I think it's the best thing I've done so far.
Well, the Asian festival that Chris has organized has actually almost outgrown its space at the high school, so you're going to have to look for a bigger venue, I think, next year, but was a tremendous success, and a lot of hard work goes into that. We appreciate it.
Okay.
I just actually wanted, again, I don't want to de-emphasize the commission. The commission has evolved, and I'm really excited to work with them going forward. I think there's a lot of good stuff that we can do together, and I just want to, again, give them a shout out as well.
Yeah, and the commission's taken the lead on the sanctuary city issue.
Yes.
That's really helped us, and the presentation Mr. Narrow made on behalf of the commission, I thought was outstanding. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
Right on cue.
We're ready to do the fire department budget. Chief Ward, welcome.
Good evening. Before we started, I didn't know if I could take a minute to let you know that you probably know this is Anthony's last meeting. He wants to go out for a beer, so I didn't know if we could shorten this up.
Now, we thank you for your many, many years of coming here and explaining the various financial things to us, and wish you all the best in your next role.
Thank you.
You're going to be a deputy town administrator? Or
Assistant town administrator in Littleton.
Yeah, very good.
So it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure working for Brookline and the citizens and supporting these two great departments. You're very fortunate to have a police and fire department like we have here in Brookline, so it's been an honor.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So tell us about your budget, Chief Ward.
I figured I'd just start with, are we doing the vacancies first, or the budget?
Let's do the budget, and then we'll do the vacancies.
Well, we got unanimous decisions on the capital and the operating budget downstairs. As you know, it's been a trying year for us and an exciting year, but we've had some good some good things happen. We got a Class 1 ISO rating the other day, which will take effect in June.
I even told my insurance agent about it today, so I'll see if my insurance goes down.
Well, I think each person should call their insurance, homeowners and business owners, because not every insurance company uses it. So you might want to switch to one that does if you're going to get a lower rate on that. And as you know, we were up in front of you before. We got the American Heart Association Award for pre-hospital care, along with Fallon Ambulance. And this is my first time here, so I don't know if you're asking
Keep going.
questions.
Keep going. So the budget from a staffing perspective is level, but due to the collective bargaining agreements, we've seen over a pretty substantial trend of increases.
Yes, we're working on that.
What are some of the accomplishments you've had over the year?
Well, as I mentioned, the Class 1 and the Mission Lifeline Gold Award, we were also able to get 2 grants to help us do a very successful senior fire safety program. We visited over 200 homes and installed over 400 combination smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. That's actually wrapping up next week. We got a little more money to do a few more homes, and people keep calling about that program, so we're going to do a few more, and that'll end next week. We put together 2 committees, one for the maintenance and training facility, which is moving along well, and the second committee will start on the new Engine 6 that we'll be ordering if it's voted at town meeting. We were able to respond to over 95% of our 911 calls in under 4 minutes, exceeding NFPA 1710, which we try to do every year. We were able to get out in the community more to more events, Brookline Day, Alternatives to College Fair, the ELL Community Fair. We had an open house at Babcock Street that was very successful, and we hosted over 100 community, 100 daycare visits at our fire stations that went over very well. Just a few of the things that we accomplished.
So the last time you were before us, it was about the fire truck. So I presume you successfully procured the truck?
The truck is in, it's being used, the guys like it, and hopefully we have it for a long time.
I saw a Somerville truck roaming around town.
Yes, we had to give the Newton truck back, and we got a Somerville truck, but that's back now too, so we're running our own pieces right now. I hope you didn't just jinx me, but we...
Wouldn't take much.
Well, I saw that, so most of the firefighters have completed 1 or 2 on the certification.
Yeah, we do that in the training academy for when the recruits come on. So the 7 that start in April, they'll get that firefighter 1, 2, and then hopefully tonight you'll vote for some more people, and they'll get it in September.
Okay. And you had some people get the instructor certification as well.
Yeah, the numbers you're looking at, the projections of 0, I assume you're asking about.
Well, I was looking at your actuals for 2016, actually,
We had a grant to pay for those.
Uh-huh.
And we're trying to get more grants so we can continue programs like that. We're looking at several right now.
So you had 12 certified on technical rescue, is that right?
Right.
And what does that involve?
That's everything from, not quite trench rescue, but collapse, building collapse, ceilings coming down during a fire. Those people have special techniques to rescue people.
And then, yeah, there were 13 incident safety officers. What's their role?
That they're called in if there's a fire. Hopefully, one of them is available, and their job is to walk around the building and report to the commander if they see anything unsafe. If they see somebody with a mask off or their Scott pack running out, they'll say, "You're not going in." If they see something overhanging from a building that looks dangerous or fire breaking out somewhere else, they'll report to the incident commander.
Okay.
Selectman Franco?
I'm looking at your performance workload indicators around multiple alarm fires and large and medium fires. Large fires being over $100,000 and medium fires being under $100,000. And the numbers are a little wonky year to year because we're dealing with relatively small numbers. But it seems as though we may be seeing more multiple alarm fires and the size of fires may be increasing. I'm wondering if you can tell me I'm right in that inference or I'm totally off base.
No, we just had this conversation downstairs. The way furniture is built now and the way homes and apartments are insulated, the fires are burning hotter, they're burning faster, and they're getting into other rooms where we would be there before it got out of a room. Now, in 4 or 5 minutes, these things are just flashing over and extending. So you'll see an increase almost every community on multiple alarm fires.
Wow. I would suggest, I don't know if maybe you can get a grant to do this, but if you put together some material that you could leave with the building commissioner's office, so if somebody's renovating their home or building new or something, some recommendations of don't put this in your house or do go for this or something that, might help with that.
Well, they're statewide, they're looking at trying to do away with it comes down to some of the, it sounds funny, but it was a fireproofing they put in the furnitures to slow down the spread. It's actually it's causing cancers and the fires are spreading faster. And so they're looking to roll back some of those requirements on the furniture.
Wow, okay.
Mr. Kleckner, you've information about a supplemental budget request on the fire department?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. As Rob mentioned, we had a very complicated collective bargaining process last year, which resulted in a settlement, but it was at the 11th hour of before we were heading into the state Joint Labor Management Committee arbitration proceeding. We've had this collective bargaining agreement in place now for a few months, and in addition to that, we've had a lot of vacancies that have resulted, in addition to sick, injured, and other leave patterns, and we're very concerned about the adequacy of this year's budget and next year's budget, because next year's budget is built upon this year's budget. And as a result of that, we have decided to allocate really all of the capacity that we have since the first time we submitted our budget in February to supplement the fire department's budget in fiscal 18. That consists of an additional $281,919. Sounds like a lot of money, and it is, of course, but understand the fire department budget is about $15 million. And so we want to be conservative about that. Hopefully, we won't need that much. The next item on your agenda this evening is to authorize the filling of vacant positions. And what we have decided to do is to really be proactive and try to anticipate that and not waste any time in filling these positions. They do have to go to the academy before they are put on a frontline group. So, there is a lot of delay in that process, and we believe that probably one of the most effective ways of reducing this deficit that we're projecting is to have no vacancies, to minimize the number of vacancies. So I do want you to be aware of this, and I believe that was conveyed to the advisory committee this evening, and I assume that was part of their vote of support this evening. So I believe I submitted to you earlier this evening a memo that talks about amending the fire department original request by $281,919 which would all be in the personnel item, for a total of $14,980,571.
Okay. Any questions or comments on that? Anything else going on in the department you'd like to?
How about the training facility, Rob? Would you mind giving the board an update on that
Yeah,
project?
we've had, we put a committee together, we've met 6 times with the architect and the building department. It's moving along well. They're looking to break ground in November with about a 6 to 8 months time period to build. And it seems to be moving along well. The committee has made some suggestions to lower the cost from the original design. And I could have Chief of Ops Flaherty update you. He was at the last meeting I couldn't make. Did you have anything to add to that?
No, everything is well on track.
Wonderful.
We've, as the chief has said, we've had 6 meetings with the architects, Gallant Associates, and we've had some subcommittees as far as the maintenance division, the training division have all had adequate input to, make upgrades and a few changes, and we've tried to stay within the budget, and the building department has reminded us of that numerous times. So
As they are wont to do.
Yep, everybody has their job, so. But it's going well.
What stage is that in? Is it ready to go out to bid yet, or?
Not quite there.
So they're doing construction drawings?
We are inching up on the final design phases. The building department is interacting with the utilities to find a more expeditious and cheaper way of providing power to the site. And so we're getting there.
Mr. Chairman, can I just say to Anthony also, publicly want to really congratulate Anthony for his new position as Assistant Town Administrator in the town of Littleton, Massachusetts. Anthony and I have been talking about his desire to go into this profession. I'm really proud, Anthony, of your efforts. I know it wasn't easy. There's not a lot of openings that open up in this profession, but I just want to say thank you for all what you've done for the town. We're proud of you. Good luck in the future.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you.
And Littleton's gain is our loss, so luckily you're going to stay in Massachusetts, and maybe there'll be an opening back here in Brookline at some point in the future. And
We'll see.
we'll see you then.
I hope you live kind of close to Littleton then.
Miles-wise, it's longer, but
Oh.
commute and time-wise, it's pretty much the same.
My husband works up there and he commutes from Brookline, and it's pretty grueling commute.
Well, coming in and out of Brookline is probably part of the problem.
I'm sure that's right.
Okay, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you all.
So the next item is the fire department vacancies. So we're done with budgets for the evening. See, we could have done the selectmen's budget tonight. Who knew? So Chief Ward, tell us what's going on.
Even though that we're hiring the class that's starting April 3rd with 7 firefighters, we're still going to be short. We would like to run another class in September, and we're anticipating anywhere from 11 to 14 vacancies by September 1st. I have 2 people that are applied for disabilities. They should be out. Another person just signed his papers to retire on April 3rd. I'm expecting 2 more before June. So
Wow.
that'll be 11 vacancies by September, and there's a lot of people that could retire in between then, so I'm asking that we fill up right to the 153 that is budgeted.
So the additional 10 will do it?
No, I think we'll have probably 14 vacancies by September 1st. If not, I'd like to hire as many vacancies as we have.
Right. So we'll be coming back, but right now, I
Okay.
believe it's 10 that
10.
you're looking for.
10 we put in.
There's no way to start those classes sooner than September?
We don't want to start one in the summer because then we lose the pay for those guys and would have to pay overtime. Summertime is our vacation period,
Yeah.
so we don't want to be running a class there. We use those vacancies, the salaries,
Right.
to help pay for the overtime.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, so any other questions or comments? This is done pursuant to civil service. You
Yes.
get a list from
Right.
the state. Are they going to have this many people on their lists?
I believe there's 26 residents on the list right now.
Really?
Yeah, it's a new list that just came out December 1st.
26 Brookline residents?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, great.
Is this going to be at Moon Island, or what's the
No,
training
we'll-
facility?
We'll be able to fit in the 10 weeks if we start the first week in September before they break ground up there.
Perfect.
Okay. So I'll move that we authorize the filling of 10 vacancies in the position of firefighter. If you, all in favor, say aye. God, I'm losing it. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. You can tell I'm starting to fade.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Would you like to do the warrant first? So we're going to do a little calendar shuffling, and we're going to take item 12, which is the warrant for town meeting, and thankfully, this is much fewer warrant articles than we've seen the last couple of town meetings. There's 22, I was going to say.
23.
23. Well,
The warrant closed 2 weeks ago, and we were supposed to have the board vote this past Tuesday, but obviously we had the snowstorm that prevented us from having our meeting. So we now have 23 warrant articles that were submitted. I know the advisory committee is very anxious to get going with warrant article reviews. The first 8 or so, 9 or so are the pretty standard annual warrant articles that we file with mostly respect to the budget. Then we also have some articles coming out of the Municipal Modernization Act, 2 regarding speed limits and 1 regarding debt premium. We have 1 related to campaign finance. We have 1 coming from the Commission on Disability, which apparently is a creature of state law and not in our Brookline bylaws, so they would like to see that be in our Brookline bylaws. We have an article related to a recreational marijuana establishment, putting a zoning moratorium for temporary. We talked about that when we were talking about the board filing articles. And we also have a couple related to climate action, 1 regarding the net zero initiative for the ninth school and the high school, another 1 regarding the Paris Agreement. And then we also have a couple of resolutions, 1 on the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. I'm not sure if Lloyd, I'm sure will be back to talk about that.
we're talking about that a little later.
And then we also have another one on the gas tax resolution. So the only change from what was originally filed is that there were 2 petitioners that left off the or act on anything relative here too. I got permission to insert that into what they filed, and once you execute that, I will post everything up on the website.
Shoot, was I one of the people that left that
Nope,
out?
you were not.
Okay. I will, do any questions or discussion of the warrant? I will move that we execute the warrant for the May 23rd annual town meeting. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
We can either jump into warrant articles. There are a couple that can probably be dispatched pretty quickly.
Well, but
public
we,
hearings.
they're
Oh, they're
noticed as
noticed for
public
8:30, so-
hearings.
The election warrant.
The election warrant, we can also.
Yeah, we can do that one. Are you expecting bond counsel, or?
Yeah, I gave them a start time of 8 o'clock, so.
Okay. So, okay,
pretty
so
close.
why don't we This is item 14, which is the technical execution of the annual town election warrant. I don't know if there's much to discuss. This is the warrant for 2 selectmen, 4 trustees of the public library, 3 members of the school committee, 10 meeting members for 3 years in all the precincts, 5 town meeting members, and then 1 town meeting for 2 years in precinct 12, 1 town meeting member for 1 year in precincts 2, 4, and 6. And the nominations closed last week, and the good news is, well, depending on where you sit, it may or may not be good news, but I think for the town, it's good news that we have contested races in most of our offices.
I heard that there is only 2 seats in all of town government that are not contested.
Yeah,
One of them is the 2-year term for town meeting in precinct 12.
Yes.
Right. So it's funny because I remember my budget speech at town meeting last year. I commented on the lack of competition in town elections, and so.
You've gotten off so easy.
I know.
What power you have. People hang on your every word. Well, I think the most important thing about the election warrant is to remind people that the polling locations have not changed from where they voted in November. So go to the same place, same hours, and remember to exercise your civic duty.
Right.
And it's May 2nd. Did
May
you say
2nd,
that?
yep. May 2nd, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Right. Okay, so I will move that we execute the May 2nd, 2017 annual town election warrant. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And is there anything else we can move up? I don't see anything that we can move up. So we have bond council coming at 8, and then we've noticed the warrant articles for 8:30. We should, I'll tell you, when we post these things, we should do kind of what the planning board does. They'll say starting times are approximate and can happen anywhere like 15 or 20 minutes before the posted time.
They do that for public hearings?
I want to say so. We should look into whether we can have that kind of language so we don't run into this situation where we have to take a break.
Maybe have the public hearings at 7 and do all the other.
Yeah, you know, it's
business later.
yeah, public hearings are so hard to predict how they're going to last, and even you know, constructing the calendar it's kind of an art. And sometimes we're good at it, and sometimes we blow it. So tonight we underestimated a few things.
Well, let's take a break.
So we'll take a break until 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay, Melissa. Ms. Goff.
Good evening. So in addition to the snowstorm kind of changing things for the warrant, we also were supposed to go out for our bond sale on last Tuesday. We ended up having to shift it to Wednesday. You should have a memo in your packet and a mountain of paperwork in the conference room as
We
a result.
noticed that.
It's hard to miss it.
Yeah, so we, in addition to getting our AAA bond rating reaffirmed, on Wednesday, March 15th, we went out for $36,925,000 of new general obligation bonds. The favorable bidder was Robert W. Byard and Company, and we had a true interest cost of 3.088, and we have a net premium, bond premium of 2.753,400, and based on all of the above, in my memo, I'm looking for your approval of the sale of bonds for $36,925,000 to the winning bidder. You also have the official statement and a recommended vote. Since this time, we've been talking a lot with bond counsel about some of the documentation. You had a memo in your packet this past week talking about some of the documentation. Bond counsel is here tonight to also kind of review some of the materials that you have in front of you. And he has also brought an amended vote that is addressing some concerns that Selectman Green raised. And he's available also to answer any other questions that you may have.
Yeah. Just to give the public an idea of the breadth and depth of this bond offering.
Sure.
Why don't you go through the list of projects that this is funding?
Sure. The first one is for the Devotion School. That's the biggest piece of it. It's a $33 million issuance for a term of 25 years.
And that's actually the first or the second?
So last year we went for 10 million, so this is the second piece of that. The third piece of borrowing will be done next year, and that will be the piece that will touch the debt exclusion.
Okay.
The next piece is $1 million for the wastewater systems improvement. After that, we are replacing the Tower 1 truck at $800,000. We did a design review process last year for Quarry Hill Playground, so now we're ready for construction. Building envelope fenestration repairs, that's basically doing some work around town and school buildings based on a recommended building plan. Then we have the fire maintenance facility. This is for the design-related work that the chief talked about in his earlier budget vote. And last year, we were still trying to figure out the structure for the driving range financing, and now we are ready to permanently finance the 265 under an old bond issuance and $235,000 under a newer bond issuance for the golf course. And then we have $245,000 related to the design work for the Carlton Street footbridge.
I never thought I'd hear the Carlton Street footbridge again. And it keeps coming back. Now, the fire truck, is that the one we just bought with reserve fund?
No, that was a ladder truck. This is Tower 1, which we did a year earlier than we were anticipating because they had a lot of maintenance issues, and so the chief had been trying to sell it for a couple of years, and he found a buyer, I believe up in Canada, that he was able to sell it. So we basically changed our plan in order to be able to fund it this year.
Okay. And what happens to the bond premium? I know we have a warrant article.
Yep. So our bond premium traditionally, when it's general fund related, would be recorded as general revenue, and then at the end of the year, it would fall as free cash. Part of Municipal Modernization Act allows us to treat the bond premium differently going forward, where we can apply the proceeds after we pay for the issuance costs to pay down what we're actually going to be needing to borrow. So that is one of our recommendations on the warrant in order to be able to do that. Bond premiums that are associated with debt exclusion projects already get applied in that manner.
So you'll be recommending that we use this particular bond premium to pay down?
This one will be the last one that we will treat in the old way, and then once the warrant article passes in May, everything else going forward we can treat in this way.
Gotcha. Selectman Green.
I just want to mention that I raised a number of issues with bond counsel regarding the timing of our receiving documents and reviewing them. And, I think going forward, we're going to be able to, have these documents in our possession in sufficient time to at least understand or begin to understand, what they mean and what it is we're signing our lives away on. So I appreciate the fact that, I think we have an understanding on the process going forward that will provide the board, I think, with a better basis for knowingly signing the documents that are related to bond issues. I mean, it's not as if, there's any risk that there's something in the bond documents that's going to, blow up in our face. Rather, it's a question, in my view, of just good practices. It helps discipline a process of issuing bonds. And secondly, if in the future, we do have some crooks in the staff, we'll be able to protect ourselves against, whatever, the consequences of that are. So I think we're in good shape now.
Okay.
Well, I would love to hear what some of your issues were, since bond counsel is here, if you want to ask him some questions.
Well, my one of the concerns was, that we received a abbreviated version of the preliminary official statement just last Friday. Number one, it wasn't complete, and number two, it occurred after the sale of the bonds, which seems to me kind of too late. So, going forward, we need to have that document, which is a major disclosure document, which we don't sign, but still, is our document, as a town, in time for us to be familiar with what it is we're saying and be able to ask, Melissa or whoever, what type of due diligence they've done to ensure that everything in the document is accurate and that, we're not missing anything, that there's nothing that we know coming down the pike that is not addressed in the documents. The other thing is the document that we do sign, and that is the tax certificate. I mean, tax certificates can be very, very complicated. I mean, ours is fairly straightforward if you know a little bit about what the tax certificate is trying to do. And that, because we're signing it and we're putting our names on the document that is very important to the Internal Revenue Service, we need to get that with sufficient time that we can just get an understanding, not a deep understanding, but a general understanding of what this document says, what it commits us to doing, and be able to ask staff or bond counsel questions so that people who are not in the bond world, not in the tax world, at least know what it is they are saying by signing this document. No one's going to become an expert on the arcane details of the tax regulations, but at least we should know, for example, that the proceeds are going to be spent within the time period that it says it's going to be spent in the tax certificate. I mean, that has very significant, great significance in the tax regulations, but all we need to know is that, yes, we're going to spend this money within, 2 years as we're required, and that is a reasonable expectation based on, the plans and based on, the other things. So I think, those are my concerns. I mean, not expecting this board, those of you who don't work in this area, to become expert in tax law, but at least have enough basic understanding that you know what questions to ask the staff to give you comfort that when you sign the document, you're signing it with some amount of knowledge that.
Well, I think expecting the rest of us to become experts is really not going to happen.
Yeah,
but I do have some questions, though. I'm surprised to see a playground renovation on here for 10 years, $700,000, and $380,000 for building envelope fenestration repairs for 5 years. Those are kind of ephemeral things. So I'm surprised to see that we're bonding them. What's our policy? How do you decide what things, or I don't know if it's you or Mel or who's making the decision, as we're currently finance directorless, but how do we make the decision of what to go out with the bonds?
Sure. It all really does start with our fiscal policy. So we have a policy that says that 6% of prior year net revenue goes to the CIP. On top of that is free cash, which gets us to 7.5%. And we try and have a balance between debt financed and cash. We have a target. We try to get to around 4% of debt financed and around 2% for cash within that 6% bucket. So it really is just a factor of balancing the other projects in the CIP and trying to be able to provide some capacity in order to get the projects that need to be done in the given fiscal year.
But to be clear, that our town meeting has authorized this, each of these financing mechanisms, whether it's borrowing or a direct appropriation, it's all been approved.
The authorizations have
previously.
already occurred by the time we go out to borrow.
Okay, maybe I wasn't paying attention when we did
Yeah,
that. But
these
I-
needed a 2/3 vote.
And
Okay,
these may be
the
a
building-
part of a project. In
Yeah,
other words,
okay.
we might have had town meeting authorize us to borrow for designing and construction, and maybe this is only the design.
fire
part.
Right, but I'm
Facility's a
more
good
concerned
example.
about like the building envelope fenestration thing.
So the-
Which, how do
sure.
we know we're not going to need, I assume when you're putting this out to bond for 5 years, you're saying that's going to last for 5 years at least.
So what I'm trying to do is make sure that we have enough cash in the door before the end of the fiscal year. So I'm talking to Ray about what he's doing with these projects. And so that was a $2.1 million authorization. So I know that at the very end of the fiscal year, he's going to be spending around that amount of money that I need to make sure that I have covered. So that's really why that 385 is
I think the
the
question
number.
is what goes into the determination of the length of the bond, or that particular issue?
So what I'm looking at is prior year history of what we've been bonding and trying to follow that model in terms of the term and things like that.
There are limits, I believe there are guidance, and not only guidance, but prescriptive terms in the general laws.
And we have a financial advisor for Southwest that also provides guidance on the length of term for each of these issuances.
And
as well.
generally, too, we try to be pretty aggressive in paying these things off.
We also have policies that try and get our debt to mature within 10 years, at least 60% of our debt. That's one of our targets for our CIP policies.
So do you want to respond to Bernard as to whether you think you would be spending all of these within 2 years?
That is, I talk with departments about this all the time, and we try and make sure that we're not going for more than what we actually need. So my anticipation is that we will be spending these within 2 years.
That's actually a legal requirement.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure we're.
But if it's a legal requirement, there's also a practical engineering requirement.
Right.
I mean, we can say we expect to, build this, building and complete the expenditures within 2 years, but, if they run into a subsurface condition, things can change.
In some cases, the money's already been spent. For example, Tower 1, we've already purchased, so I
Right,
already
and
know.
Devotion's well underway.
Most of
so-
the, yeah, a lot of that is.
And Corey Hill, we just awarded that contract tonight.
Yeah. Okay, so and the golf course projects, are those being paid back out of their enterprise
It's
fund?
incorporated into their debt service within the enterprise fund.
Okay. And then I want to congratulate everyone on the AAA bond rating once again. I always think that is tremendously important, and I say to people, it's like when you go out to get a mortgage for a home, it makes a huge difference in what you're paying overall if you have the better rating versus a worse one. So the AAA is delightful. What are we happy with this interest rate?
I think we are. I know Peter was thrilled. Our financial advisor thought it was a really great result. I think we did a little bit better last year, but, obviously the feds raised the interest rate the very same day. But Peter had said that was already incorporated into the numbers that we received, so.
Just as a matter of comparison, a year ago when we went out to, when we placed some bonds, what was the interest rate then?
Just a little bit lower than this, and I can get that for you.
But just a little?
Yeah, probably about 0.25% maybe, if that.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm interested to know what the rating agency's comments were when they delivered the AAA bond rating. One of the things that I observed from reading this packet is, or the thing I found most interesting is the major taxpayers in town and the major employers in town. We, I think on this board, have been pontificating about our concerns or outright opposition to some of the things that are happening in Washington, D.C. And if you look at that list of major taxpayers and major employers, a lot of them are centered in healthcare and education, two sectors that are slated for fundamental reshaping, both in terms of the way that those services are delivered, their funding, and the contributions that regular citizens make. So I'm most curious to know what the rating agency's comments were in regards to this community's long-term exposure should federal policy change.
Sure. The bulk of the conversation that we have with our ratings agency is talking about our fiscal policies and essentially the way that we weather downturns in our economic conditions. So I would think that they would, knowing that we have been so disciplined over the past 20-plus years in adhering to our fiscal policies, and that we've been able to do that and navigate things like the Great Recession by adhering to that. I think that that helps them figure out, how our financial stability. And I think that they also are very aware of the things that we are encountering with school projects, knowing that we have an enrollment problem that's articulated in our financial plan. It's something that we highlight and we talk about a lot in a lot of venues, and knowing that we are going to be having 2 pretty substantial debt exclusions coming online related to those. I think that's something that I believe they flagged that in their report as well. But primarily, we just talk about the way that we allocate free cash, the way that we fund our CIP, because we put a lot of cash into our CIP, which not a lot of the communities do it in that way. A lot of other communities may have a higher bonding rate, the higher borrowing level than we do. So we kind of explain the methodology behind the allocation of our free cash.
So let me just underscore the point I'm making. So the 2 largest taxpayers in town, and this is taxpayers, is 10 Brookline Place. They pay almost $2 million in property taxes every year. That's just shy of 1% of the overall levy. The trustees of Boston University pay just over $1.8 million. That's just about 0.9% of the overall levy. And again, this is tax. There's additional payments in lieu of taxes for the university. The major employer in town, with a whopping 1,336 employees, and I believe a major tenant at 10 Brookline Place, is Partners Healthcare. So should BU suddenly be unable to pay their property tax bill, and should Partners Healthcare suddenly constrict their employment, then I don't care how disciplined our financial policies are, we are going to have a problem in this town.
I would say that you may recall a few years ago when the federal government was having their issues in Congress with raising the debt ceiling. There was a crisis, and I believe the grading agencies put Brookline and many, many other similar situated communities on a watch list. And I wouldn't be surprised if someday, with the way things are going in Washington, that would happen again. That would concern us, but we wouldn't be the only one in that boat, I can assure you. Yeah. I guess it's not a great thing, but, in the way Proposition 2.5 works, we have a levy limit, and if one particular person, couldn't pay their taxes or their assessment was lowered for whatever reason, that gets redistributed among the entire tax base. And so I know Moody's is aware of that, but that's not a good thing, I'm not suggesting. But, perhaps we will see Moody's or others reinstitute their watch list process.
Well, to that point,
if people, we're fairly assertive of leaning the property if people don't pay their property tax.
Right. I'm simply flagging that there's this issue out there. I think to Mr. Kleckner's point, we would not be the only one with this issue. Metro Boston would be in serious trouble if our eds and meds ran into trouble. But it's something that I think this board has to be...
Eds and meds.
Yes.
I like that.
Has to be mindful of over the next few years.
Selectman Heller.
I just have a question here, a point of information. I'm not sure I think maybe the mythical finance director is probably the one who should answer it, but I noticed that there is a significant discrepancy between the amount of property tax paid by the major taxpayers and their assessed valuation. Now, there must be reasons for that, and maybe I need to call Gary
It's just a
McCabe.
percentage. It's a,
Well, but it isn't. If you look, Mel, I mean, the trustees of Boston University have an, well, they're not, I don't want to
Well,
use them
but
out.
then
Okay, look at Chestnut Hill Realty.
that's
which is-
residential property versus 10 Brookline Place, which
Is
is
commercial,
commercial.
yeah,
Commercial has a
right.
higher rate.
Right.
And
right.
trustees of Boston University, don't forget that, anything that's used for an exempt
Yes,
purpose is.
no, that's
yeah.
why I wanted to drop it, but, I think that Hersha Hospitality, which is the Marriott Hotel, is a commercial enterprise, and it's, I don't know. I just seem
No,
to
it
see
says
different-
apartments.
I seem to see different numbers here, and I'm just wondering what kinds of exemptions or whatever.
Yeah, that's probably a conversation you should have with Mr. McCabe.
Yeah,
or-
that table specifically
As I
was
said,
provided by the
municipal
assessing
finance director.
department.
What?
That table specifically was provided, so the information that comes into this document comes from a variety of departments. The assessor provides the property tax information. I get a statement on economic activity from the Economic Development Division. So it's definitely a team effort putting this document together.
Mr. McCabe is here, and I might be able to
Mr. McKay,
come on up,
maybe you can answer.
join the party.
I'm sorry. I can't see you. These new glasses I have obviously don't work.
Hi, Gary McCabe, Chief Assessor.
This is called catching you cold.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We did prepare, as Melissa mentioned, my office does prepare this chart for the bond rating report, and has for, every year that I've been here, so I'm sure it's an annual event. Selectman Hill, if I understand your question correctly, I think it does have to do with the tax rates. Some properties are taxed at the residential rate, which for this year is $9.88, slightly less than 1% of the value. The commercial properties are taxed at $16.20, or 1.6% of value. So I think the discrepancy that you're seeing is in the rate. So you can have a higher value that's residential and effectively a lower tax. I think that's what you're saying, because when I review these numbers, I see that too, and I check it.
That's good.
Right.
I'm really happy to hear that part.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
I have one final question. So I know we have been fortunate enough on the overrides that we've had to pass them all, but some of the neighboring communities haven't always passed all their overrides. So if we had a debt exclusion override and it didn't pass, would that affect our bond rating?
I'm not sure what the experiences of communities that have had failed debt exclusions, whether or not that has impacted their bond rating. It is an interesting question. It's something that I could do some more research on, though.
Okay, just wondering.
Any questions for bond counsel, Selectman Green?
I've had a conversation with him before. I'd appreciate it if you sort of give us a view of, or an overview of what, we're going to be signing after the meeting, and, whether firstborn or secondborn is, on the line.
You get to pick. It depends on which one has offended you the most on a given day.
They both have.
But yeah,
Why don't you introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, of course. I'm Rick Manley. I'm a partner in charge of the city and town practice at our law firm, Lock Lord, which, if you remember, anybody in this business going back a ways used to be called Palmer and Dodge. And sort of, our phone numbers are more or less the same. Our views are pretty much the same, but have had a number of different names over time. But we just keep doing this because this is sort of what we do. The thing about the stack of documents, I think, that kind of demystifies them a little bit for me is there's sort of the bonds themselves, which you'll see on sort of the fancy paper, and what's called a continuing disclosure agreement. And the bonds are actually the contract between the town and the holders of the buyers of the bonds. And those, are sort of the thing you sell
in the most basic sense. Continuing disclosure agreement is incorporated in the form of the bond to create sort of a third-party beneficiary for subsequent bondholders to be able to enforce the town's obligations to provide ongoing disclosure about its affairs for the time that the bonds are outstanding. And that's something that anyone dealing in the municipal marketplace needs to do these days. It's required to be in place if an underwriter wants to buy the bonds. So that so if you sort of take those two pieces aside as kind of the thing you deliver in order to get the buyers of the bonds to take them. The bonds will ultimately reside at the depository trust company in New York, where they're held and then sort of on computer entries actually allocated among various broker-dealers and ultimately the end holders of the bonds. They might be funds like Fidelity, and they can be individuals too. The balance of the documents are those that we need to have the town help us prepare as we're getting ready for the bond sale, so that we can render our approving legal opinion. So the other thing that the bondholders are going to want is the opinion of outside counsel to say, gee, we've looked these things over, and first and foremost, the bonds are properly authorized, that is, the proceedings taken in town meeting and so forth were done the right way, that the meetings was called pursuant to a warrant, posted in the right places, 2/3 vote was obtained, all the various things that state law and local bylaws and other things might require. We have to go through and figure out if that's been done. We do all of that well before there's a bond sale, but when we get to the point of the actual sale, we sort of lay out all those facts to be confirmed in the documents. The funny thing about the municipal practice, not to bore you too much with this, but if the bonds are not properly approved, they can't be paid back. You don't have the authority to pay them back. And notions of unjust enrichment and other things like, well, the guy from Merrill Lynch can't say, when we had a Merrill Lynch, he can't say, well, I paid him the money. What do you mean they can keep it and not pay me back? But the answer is that going way back into maybe the time of railroads going across the country with all kinds of bad behavior going on, it was felt that you couldn't have an unscrupulous board of selectmen get the town in a bad spot. And that if you want to lend money to the town, then you as the lender have it sort of on your burden to figure out if it's properly approved or not. So that's sort of the main aspect of giving a bond opinion to the bond market, is to say, okay, if you lend the money, here's an opinion of counsel that says we think the bonds are okay. Why is that important? Well, because before they come screaming to you to get paid, they'll also come suing us too. So
I like that.
So we take this very seriously, actually, to do our very best to not miss that. So the bond opinion looks at the question: what were these properly authorized, and are they enforceable? Obligations of the town. The opinion also addresses, in a standard bond opinion, what much of the market wants to know is the interest on the bonds exempt from federal tax and, if applicable, state tax too. So those are the two main things that come through in the bond opinion. And so to back that up, the balance of the documents deal with that. So you have one that we call the signature no litigation and official statement certificate that lays out a bunch of things like, what are you selling? Have you rescinded any of those things? That sort of thing. Confirming for us. Various officials tell us different things about it. I don't know if you've I've seen a copy of my letter I sent to Melissa the other day, but it kind of walks you through the things that are said there. Maybe you've seen that? Okay. So that's sort of the point of that exercise, is so that we can say, yes, in fact, the town has confirmed what it is it's looking to sell, and it's also confirming a number of other things, including, what we thought the bylaws were, at the time that we rendered our opinion, were also confirmed too. So we're just sort of basically laying out and confirming the facts as we've explored them along the way. Anyway, because since the bonds are sold at a competitive sale, we have to make sure that as to the best of our ability, we've discussed with the town and financial advisor and so forth, exactly what it is that's being sold and so forth. So it's really confirming things that we already know to be the case. But that's sort of how we properly document these things. The next thing that we have that's a meaty document is the tax certificate. As Selectman Green mentioned, it can be a bit of a morass, but basically what it's doing is confirming a number of things, again, that we've worked out with the town, to explain, okay, is this going to be governmentally owned and operated, this facility, these facilities that you might be financing, whether it's a school building, town hall, or something else. And that's important because the tax code does not favor the use of tax-exempt debt to benefit private, concerns, businesses, and so forth. There's all kinds of flavors in between. If you drive around New England these days, you can see solar panels on the rooftops of school buildings, for example, all over the place. There's a lot of them in Newton. There's many in my town as well. But they have to be done the right way. Otherwise, you can run into sort of worries about that. For example, if you issued bonds to close your landfill, that's sort of fine, and then the guys from the various solar panel companies come by and say, what a lovely place to put our solar panels, can we do that, and we'll pay you something for the opportunity to lease this space, or we'll give you a discount on the power produced, or whatever it might be, right? And we'll get exclusive use of this area for our business. And I've had to make very sad phone calls to some communities about, what, I think you just screwed up your bond issue by doing this. Because what happens ultimately if you have problems like this, bonds that you thought were tax exempt are possibly not tax exempt. And how does that happen? Well, the IRS audits these things randomly. In the last year, we have seen 10 audits of communities in Massachusetts, random audits, and they all came out just fine. But they're interested, they do check. And so it's very important for us to make sure that the factual information about what is it that we're doing with the facilities, what do we expect to do with the facilities, that sort of thing, is well understood, and so that we can, the first thing that when an audit happens, they say, please send us the documents, including the tax work, so we can understand what folks thought they were doing at the time. The good and the bad part about bonds is that they're outstanding for a really long time, and they could be audited any time. So after everybody has moved off to somewhere else in retirement to avoid the bad weather, suddenly up comes an IRS agent that wants to know what happened, in 2006, which is one I've seen recently. So, you want to have everything there to the best of everyone's ability, because it's at the time you do the bond issue, that's when you know best what it was you were doing, of course. So. Sorry.
Yeah, I just have a question. So we've been making all of our roofs solar ready, and we're making the roof at Devotion solar ready.
Yes.
And so, am I hearing correctly that if we put solar up there ourselves, we pay to have solar installed and we get the benefits from that? That's okay.
Yeah.
But if we enter into one of these agreements with somebody who's trying to take a private business that's trying to take the benefits of the solar agreement, and we kind of are the host, that's not okay.
Well, you have to do it the right way.
Okay.
It is very easy in certain cases to solve that problem, and very tricky in other cases to solve that problem. So we try to advise folks to issue spot on these things. If they're thinking of doing something like that, and it could be anything, not just the solar things, but food service contracts in your school cafeterias, for example. People contract out with Whitson's or somebody else like that. That too can give rise to a problem, at least as a technical matter. More often than not, there are ways to solve it, but they're just issues to spot and to think about. So if we were doing a project where folks knew they were going to do something like that, we might well say, but we understand that we're not going to do it unless we talk to you guys first, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So the school buildings in particular are very easy to solve because they tend to get substantial amounts of school building grants from the state, and the tax rules will allow us to say, fine, the roof was paid for with cash from the state. It wasn't paid with tax-exempt bonds, for example. And so it solves the problem. So the big school projects, which tend to be the juicier opportunities for solar, are generally easier to deal with than some of the other ones, like the landfill I mentioned.
Well, the Devotion project, we did get some state money, but we're
Yeah.
about to do a couple school projects where we're probably not getting any state money.
Right.
So
So yes, those are the situations that we in the work that we do leading up to a sale, we ask a lot of questions like that. You know, what have you got going? What do you intend to do with these facilities?
But
Who
you're
will use them?
saying we can get into trouble post-sale?
Yes.
Yeah, if we
Yes.
don't
Okay.
work through.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
More
All right.
often than not,
Learn
it can
something
be
tonight.
addressed, but if it isn't addressed, you can
Well,
have
it's
a
good to
trouble.
keep in mind.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay,
So I think that's more than you wanted to know about this, but
Well, that was actually interesting.
yeah.
but anyway, that's sort of what we're about. I think the letter will give you a little more detail, but anyway, that's the flavor of this, and be happy to talk to you, as we go along, in time. I'm happy to try and address things that still, look puzzling or interesting or both.
Okay. So, did I hear there's a revised vote?
Yes, we revised the form of the vote. As I looked at it, I thought it was probably, our standard form usually says that it was a unanimous vote, and everyone wanted to...
Do I have the revised vote?
I think you have it. Oh, it's right there, yeah.
Okay.
And this one just has an opportunity to fill in the, the actual results of
Okay,
voting at the top.
so I will move that we vote the sale of the 36,925,000 general obligation municipal purpose loan of 2017 bonds of the town dated March 28th, 2017 to Robert W. Baird and Company at the price of $39,678,455 is hereby approved and confirmed. The bonds shall be payable on March 15th of the years, and the principal amounts and bear interest at the respective rates in the chart that will be attached to the vote. I'll further move that the bonds maturing on March 15th, 2040 and March 15th, 2042, each a bond term, shall be subject to mandatory redemption or mature as follows.
And it's term bond.
Term bond, okay. In 2039, 1,320,000 will become due. 2040, $1,320,000 will become due. And the bond term due March 15, 2042, in the year 2041, 300,020, 320,000, I'll get that. And in 2042, 1,320,000 will become due, and that's the final maturity. I'll further move that in connection with the marketing and sale of the bonds, the preparation and distribution of a notice of sale and a preliminary official statement dated March 8, 2017, and a final official statement dated March 15, 2017, called the official statement, each in such form as may be approved by the acting town treasurer, be and hereby are ratified, confirmed, approved, and adopted. And I'll further move that the bonds shall be subject to redemption at the option of the town upon such terms and conditions as set forth in the official statement. And I'll further move that the acting town treasurer and the Board of Selectmen be and hereby are authorized to execute and deliver continuing disclosure undertaking in compliance with SEC Rule 15C2-12 in such form as may be approved by bond counsel to the town, which undertaking shall be incorporated by reference in the bonds for the benefit of the holders of the bonds from time to time. There's more. And I'll further move that we authorize and direct the acting treasurer, town treasurer, to establish post-issuance federal tax compliance procedures in such form as the acting town treasurer and bond counsel deem sufficient, and if such procedures are currently in place, to review and update said procedures in order to monitor and maintain the tax-exempt status of the bonds. And I'll further move that each member of the Board of Selectmen, the town clerk, the acting town treasurer, be and hereby are authorized to take any and all such actions and execute and deliver such certificates, receipts, or other documents as may be determined by them or any of them to be necessary or convenient to carry into effect the provisions of the foregoing votes. All those in favor?
Two things. One, have we taken a vote on an acting town treasurer?
Yes.
Yes.
We did? Okay. And secondly, can we just make our motion that it's going to be this written paper which you'll give to
Sure.
Kate, just in case you read anything wrong?
Right.
Sorry.
Okay. Would I do something like that?
It's a lot of numbers.
All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you.
Send that over to Kate.
Yeah. You should probably get the Word version of that. Is there anything else with the bonds?
Nope, I'm here for warrant articles.
Okay. For some reason, it thought I called Siri. Okay, so, so the first, we're now here for warrant articles, and the first one is the ever-present and ever-controversial measurers of wood and bark.
Yes, this is an annual warrant article.
Thank you.
I believe it was a vote of the 2000 town meeting that asked that this be placed on the warrant as the first article. You appoint the measurers of wood and bark annually when you do the annual appointment for department heads. And so we have two, and I believe that they are Bill McGrody and Elric
Elmont.
Elman.
Thank you, Elmont Hendrickson, who is also our sealer of weights and measures.
So I wonder how much wood and bark they're measuring.
It's a naughty job.
This was, when I first joined the advisory committee, it was in 2000, and this was I was the one speaking for the advisory committee, and I had to speak on why we should keep this. I actually came up with some reasons.
Well, actually,
Forgotten them.
our measure of wood and bark does things in this town. When I was on the advisory committee and had to present this warrant article, I found a case of a town that had a measure of wood and bark who had died, and no one noticed for a couple years. We take it a little more seriously than
Yeah, I don't think we take it too seriously. We can probably just go ahead and vote this one, Chairman?
Well, this is a public hearing.
Oh,
Is there
right,
any
right.
members of the public who wishes to speak on this warrant article? I see none. So I think...
I'm going to move favorable action on this one.
No. Okay, so I'll take Selectman Daley's motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. All the warrant articles should be this easy. The next one is another annual, that's a better word, warrant article. This is Article 6, doubling of property tax exemptions. Mr. McCabe.
Yes, Chairman Waschinsky, Gary McCabe, representing the Board of Assessors. And I bring to you an annual warrant article, this year labeled as Article 6, from the Board of Assessors for your consideration, which would allow a 2017 annual town meeting to adopt for fiscal year 18 the provisions of general law which would allow the Board of Assessors to increase the base rate of certain statutory exemptions for homeowners by up to 100%. Now, within the article, we give you some examples, and I'll just comment on one. A veteran who may be eligible for a certain exemption that has a base rate of $400, this article, if approved at town meeting, would allow us to increase the amount of the exemption to $800. This article has been brought before you and town meeting continuously since 1989, and approved. The cost of the article is borne by the overlay reserve account, under the direction of the Board of Assessors. It's estimated for fiscal year 18 that cost would be $61,000, which would not be subject to reimbursement from the state. Now, I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, I do.
Selectman Daley.
I noticed elderly is one of the categories, and that's the basic amount exempted is 500, and the proposed exemption would be 1,000. But there is a means test on that one. Is there
Correct.
not?
There is on both income limit and asset in order to qualify. This exemption is granted once you're deemed that you qualify, then you get the exemption. And you have to apply.
So we're seeing a big, we were hearing earlier from the Council on Aging, we're seeing a large increase in the number of extremely senior citizens we have in town. So are you seeing a corresponding jump in people applying for this?
We have not, as of the last few years, we have not seen an increase in the number of senior homeowners who have applied for these exemptions.
Because I wonder if we're not getting the word out.
We worry about that. It's any opportunity to speak, including tonight, is positive. We'd like to get word out that exemptions are available for those that feel they need tax
I know
relief.
you've spoken a couple times at the senior center, but they have a monthly newsletter, and you could put a little.
We do, thank you. We also have someone at the senior center to work with seniors who have questions about these exemptions during this time of year. Their scheduled hours, that's also in the newsletter and also in the local newspaper, the Brookline Tab. We're welcome, the assessors would welcome any additional ideas about publicity or raising awareness. One of the things that we encourage people to do is to consider relatives and friends and neighbors and approach them if it's appropriate to do that and say, there's these tax relief programs, and if you need any help with that, maybe I can go and speak with the assessor or call them. I think oftentimes it falls to others to bring these programs to those that are in need.
Yeah.
Selectman Franco.
One of the things that Mr. McCabe told us at the senior tax work-off program was that unlike the residential exemption, these programs don't automatically renew year over year. You've got to reapply every year. So there were, I'm sure, examples. I think Mr. McCabe has shared a couple of instances where people qualify for these exemptions or this tax relief, forget to apply for it, and therefore see their taxes increase. Now, the largest proposed increase here is, I think, $3,000, but still meaningful. And I'm going to take Mr. McCabe's comments one step further. If there's somebody that you know or you're related to who may qualify for one of these, make sure that they submit the application and it doesn't fall through the cracks.
And I assume that the requirement that it be renewed every year is a state requirement, not a town.
Correct.
That's correct. The annual application's required. We mail out applications to all homeowners who've received exemptions in the prior year as a form of a reminder to apply for the current fiscal year. We cannot prepare those applications on behalf of the taxpayer. We can only encourage them to come in if they have questions. If I may, Selectman Franco, your board also set up a study committee this year that's working now, and Selectman Franco is the chair and doing a terrific job with that, where we're looking at ways to expand these programs or raise awareness of these programs or both. And I know the next meeting is on April 5th.
Correct.
At 6:30 or 7 o'clock.
6:30 in room 111 of Town
I
Hall.
wonder, though, if, every couple of years, maybe not necessary to do it every year, but every couple of years, you might send out a letter generally to senior citizens.
We do not have that practice of, sort of a bulk mailing, if
Yeah.
you're interested. I know this is something that's
Do it
come up
in
at the
large
study
print.
committee.
Yeah.
Is whether we should do bulk mailings and how to target that audience to do that. We do have the census information that we're working with now on, that gives us some idea of who is a homeowner who may be eligible. Right?
I was wondering whether you could send such a notice with the annual tax bill, or, you send that twice a year, I believe, or four times?
Real estate tax bills are 4 times a year.
Okay, 4 times a year. So maybe the third or fourth time you could send it for the year upcoming, if you know or have a good idea of people who might be eligible.
So this is an issue that I think this committee is going to look at and come back with a recommendation with. There's a lot of different things at play. There's been some mention of targeting people who may qualify for it. May not be the right way to go because they may get offended, or they may, the application may not find its way to them. There's a whole bunch of different things. So I think the committee's going to take a look at it, come back with
That's what I'm saying, if you do a bulk mailing to all seniors, just saying, you should review these and see if you might qualify, then how can someone be offended?
Well,
people are easily offended.
If you're talking about reducing their taxes.
Selectman Green.
Well, what I was getting at with my question was, many times an impediment to people applying for government benefits or any benefits is the complexity of the application or the reapplication. What may seem like fairly simple, straightforward filling out an application to us, for people who are elderly or who have health conditions, can be just an overwhelming task. So I hope the committee looks at how to streamline, if possible, the process of applying for as well as reapplying for these benefits.
Mr. McCabe can correct me, but a lot of this particular program that we're talking about now, these sets of exemptions, are provided under state law.
Right.
And we have very limited ability to tinker with them beyond the doubling that we're talking about in Article 6. There's some conversation about maybe we want to do a program, launch a program that isn't provided for in state law, that we would do as a local option. There we would have some more flexibility to streamline the application, to tweak the eligibility, but certainly Mr. McCabe alluded to the fact that there's a member of the Senior Tax Work-Off Program whose job it is to go to the senior center and walk people through these different programs. And while I don't think they can fill out the application for somebody, they can certainly point them in the right direction and help them figure out what they qualify for and to figure out what materials they need to gather to submit the application.
Okay, any other, do you feel bold?
Well,
Like this one, or
it's a public hearing. so-
Oh, yeah, it's a public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this warrant article? I see none.
Well, thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time and
Yeah,
consideration.
no, I'll move favorable action.
I agree with Selectman Daley. I think we should.
Okay, so all those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Moving ahead, forging ahead, is Article 12. Ms. Allaire and Mr. Winkleman, welcome. Tell us what's going on.
Good evening. I'm Sarah Lynn Allaire, Chair of the Brookline Commission on Disability, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Commission in presenting this article. All the Commission members voted in favor of the article at the January meeting. I'll just give it a little history, won't make it too long, but Massachusetts has tended to be very forward in passing legislation which benefits people with disabilities. Way back in 1967, they passed or established the Architectural Access Board, which then set up the disability access regulations for buildings and programs. And then more to the point, back in 1981, the state passed a law which established the Massachusetts Office on Disability. And the purpose of that office is to guarantee full and equal participation within state government. And then 2 years later, they passed Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 8J, which established the opportunity for local communities to establish councils on disability. I say opportunity because it didn't require towns or cities to establish a council on disability, but provided the opportunity. And then in 1986, Brookline Town Meeting did accept that opportunity, and by accepting Chapter 48, Section 8J. Now, when you look at the records of that town meeting, was the fall special meeting, you'll see that Article 25, which was the article for this, consists of one sentence, and I'll read it. It says, "To see if town will accept the provisions of General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 8J, which calls for the establishment of a local handicap commission or act on anything thereto." Since 1986, a disability commission has always existed in Brookline, but for some reason, no bylaw was ever filed, or principles are established, procedures established. And this is different from every other commission in the town. All the other commissions are established by bylaw. So the purpose of Article 12, then, is to, first of all, establish the Brookline Commission on Disability within the town bylaws. And this is important, we feel, in order to confirm and clarify the role in town government and decrease in awareness of its existence. And then the second purpose of the article is to establish principles and procedures for the commission, and we feel that's important to enable everyone to know what the commission is empowered and expected to do, as well as know its rules and procedures. So what I'd like to do now is go through the article in some detail. So under Section 1, what I'd like to point out, again, it also states that the purpose of the article is to establish the commission within the town bylaws and also to establish its principles, procedures. It also says that the main purpose of the commission itself is to bring about full and equal participation in all aspects of life in the town of Brookline for people with disabilities. This section also states where the commission is located within the structure of town government, which is within the Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relationships. And it talks about the relationship with the town's ADA coordinator. As you know, the town must have a staff position as ADA coordinator, which is required by the Americans with Disabilities Act Title II. So the town coordinator is an ex officio member of the commission. She attends commission meetings and serves as the primary conduit of communication with the town of Brookline's chief diversity officer. So moving on to Section 2, definitions. Person with disabilities is defined as it is under Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Moving to Section 3, powers and duties. There are two lists of these. The first list of 6 are contained in the current version of Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 8J. The first is to research local problems of people with disabilities. Second is advise and assist officials and employees in ensuring compliance with laws and regulations. Number 3 is to coordinate and carry out programs to meet the problems of people with disabilities. 4 is to review and make recommendations about policy procedures and so forth. 5, this duty is to provide information, referrals, guidance, and technical assistance to individuals, public agencies, businesses, and organizations. And the last of these is to coordinate activities of other local groups organized for similar purpose. Now, included another further list of duties because these are actually included in the sample rules and procedures document that the Massachusetts Office on Disability has. The first is to work in cooperation with town departments and agencies to bring out maximum participation. Moving to the second page. The second is to initiate, monitor, and promote legislation at all levels. The third is to encourage public awareness of disability issues. The fourth I've found is a little bit of a glitch because it's actually a duplicate of item 5 in the prior list. So we can take that out.
Which one?
Number 4 in the second list is a duplicate of number 5 in the first list.
So then we should renumber the ones below.
Right. So then the actual the next one is to file an annual report, which shall be printed in the town's annual report. The next one is to receive gifts of property, both real and personal, in the name of the town, which would be subject to the approval of the Board of Selectmen, and such gifts would be managed by the commission for the purposes of the bylaw. Next is to take such action as the commission considers appropriate to ensure the purposes of the bylaw. And lastly is to recruit and recommend prospective commission members for the Board of Selectmen.
I have a question about that one.
Okay.
I was just a little concerned I think we need to make that clear that you're not precluding, like usually we advertise when we have openings. I don't want it to seem like it's an insiders club and only, you guys can recommend your friends and nobody else can kind of get in the door.
Okay.
Not that you do that, but
Right.
I think that it should be, I certainly encourage you to try to recruit people, but that shouldn't be the exclusive method by which people could get on this commission.
How does the commission for, excuse me, I'm having a senior moment here, a youthful senior moment. The senior center do their appointing, the Council on Aging? Doesn't it come as a recommendation?
It has, and I don't know what their bylaw says about that. And maybe you guys got this from them, but I'm just thinking about it, and I'm thinking, and they do at their meetings sort of encourage people to apply, and, they get quite a few people coming to their meetings. I'm not sure if that's the case here, and that you might not want the advertisement in the newspaper or whatever to supplement whatever the commission is doing to get new members.
I think this provision is something we should probably think about a little bit more. I will point out that this commission has been under.
I know.
The roster has not been full for
Right.
some time, and this is the first time in my term on the Board of Selectmen, and anecdotally, I've heard it's the first time in some time that we've got all the slots filled, so.
Yeah, but I don't think that has to do with whether or not the commission members recruit. I agree that we should hold this provision.
I want to point out that sentence, the end of that sentence, recruit and recommend when needed.
Yeah. I'll take a stab at revising the language and send something to you, Sarah,
Okay.
and then you can see what you think of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question regarding item 6, receive gifts of property, both real and personal, blah, 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 blah. Such gifts to be managed and controlled by the commission for the purposes of this bylaw. Why would the commission manage property? I'm thinking mainly of real property, as opposed to the town. I mean, do we do that with other departments?
That's an unusual provision.
Yeah, I would vote against that, so I don't think it's appropriate.
So
Well,
This has
usually,
been,
though, if you seek out a grant or something, and then you come to us and say, we'd like you to accept the grant so we can spend it on this
Yeah,
program.
but the board doesn't manage it, the department does.
Yeah,
The finance department, they hold it and,
yeah.
or whatever.
Okay, I'll work on that one too.
This was vetted by town council, by the way,
Yeah.
Okay.
extensively.
I think with the recruit thing,
Yeah.
I think if you somehow work the word assist in the
Yeah.
recruitment, that
Yeah.
concept. It's funny because when I read that this afternoon, I was thinking, great, we have a bylaw that says a commission is going to help us.
Right.
I took that as a positive thing.
Yeah.
No, it is. I don't mean
You
to
could even
suggest
put
it's not.
the end of the sentence first, when needed,
Right, yeah,
recruit and recommend.
yeah.
Why don't you just summarize quickly some of the procedural stuff coming up?
Okay. Under 4, we have membership. Just point out, it's volunteer members. Each serves for 3 terms. Board of Selectmen controls the membership. They appoint the members. They deal with resignations, need to replace somebody, so forth. There are conventional lines, sentences here. No member shall undertake to speak or act on behalf of the commission without approval. And all members except the ADA coordinator, who is an ex officio member, have full voting rights.
Excuse me, Sarah Lynn, I have a concern about one small provision of this section, and that is, it says the commission shall consist of 7 to 9.
Yes.
I believe it should say 7 or 9.
I agree with you on that.
We
Yeah.
should never have
Yeah.
a commission that has
Right.
an even number of members.
Right.
In case
Right.
of a controversial issue which comes to a vote, to a
Yeah.
tie,
I agree with you on that. Right. So moving on to officers.
And, excuse
Yeah,
me, that
yeah.
would also mean that when we get to section 3.23.6.
Yeah.
We would need to change that
Right.
language as well. Thank you.
Okay. Officers, there are 4, chairperson, deputy chair, secretary, and treasurer. The duties of those are listed. I would like to say that I received a notice from the ADA coordinator just today that she would like to have the sentence, which is, I think, the second from the last, where it says, "In absence of a secretary, the ADA coordinator or other commission members shall undertake these duties." And I think she would like to have the order of those 2 reversed.
Okay.
So,
So it read, "In absence of a secretary, other commission members or the ADA coordinator shall undertake these duties."
Okay.
Okay.
Given all the great work she does, I think that's perfectly reasonable.
I'm actually been taking the minutes of one committee I chair as well, so I hear where she's coming from.
I like the fact that it's in your bylaw that you have a yearly organization election. I think
Yeah,
in
that's
some
right,
committees,
yeah.
some commissions, I think this one was such a commission where the lack of institutionalizing a yearly reorganization kind of promoted stagnation. That's a good.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to see the committee is now revitalized.
Right.
The commission. The commission, does the commission need a treasurer?
Not currently.
That's for all those gifts. They were
Yeah,
giving.
but if we get any of those gifts, and I will be frank in that.
Do you really want it?
There is another later Mass General law that is, again, an opportunity law that allows communities to set aside all or a portion of handicap parking fines to the commission for projects.
Yeah, but you guys wouldn't be handling the money. It would be the department and the town treasury and.
No, they would just be letting the commission know what the finances
Right,
are,
right.
yeah.
So and then the commission,
I'll take a look at that.
yeah, and then it has the treasurer keeping financial records. I don't know of any other commission that has volunteers keeping financial records. That would be done by the comptroller, the town's comptroller, keeping financial records. Develop a budget, okay, you can, and then prepare financial statements. Oh, I don't, you know, we have accountants and, you know, people who do that. So I don't know if those are things you want to take on into the commission.
Has that ever happened in the past?
Not in Brookline. Apparently, it happens in other communities.
Really?
Again, we used the model.
Yeah, you
that was
you probably don't
developed.
want to be handling money, and that's why we have staff and.
Who are bonded.
Right.
And, you know, we have
Right,
insurance
right.
for them.
Yeah.
There's specific language in the law about the handicap parking fine about.
Yeah, but even if even if the handicap parking were designated to be used for commission purposes, you guys wouldn't be handling the money.
Right, right.
It would be staff, and you would be, you know, guiding staff, and then services would be paid for through the town, the normal town mechanisms. You guys wouldn't be, you know, engaging contractors and signing contracts.
No.
So that's a technical. Oh, I guess only the government process wonks would be interested in stuff. I guess I'm a government process wonk.
I think we would like, if there were any money, we would like to be regularly apprised of how much there was and how it was used.
Right,
So
that would be you talking to staff and demanding. Yeah,
Well, I think what she's saying is, first, we would have to determine if we wanted to, I don't know how much we get and, you know, how many people violate those handicapped parking spaces. I don't know if there's any significant money there, but.
It's substantial pot of money.
Is it really?
Yeah.
So she's saying she would like us, which I don't think we currently do, to designate those receipts to go for their use.
I believe we have.
We have?
I believe so.
Yeah.
But that would have to go through
Oh.
the normal
But
town
it's-
meeting
it's,
appropriation
It's
process.
deposited in the town treasury, even though it's designated for a certain purpose, and as Neil said, it's accounted for in the town's funds, but, you know, it is designated for that purpose.
Yeah, maybe since Lloyd's here, he can, so do you know about this money, Lloyd? How do you find out?
Oh, it's easy. There's an account that we have that's disability fund. It's from the parking violations, and I think we have about $25,000 in that.
Oh,
But keep in mind, part of that money actually pays part of the salary for the ADA coordinator.
oh, okay. So have you been keeping back from these folks the details? Have you been holding out?
No, I think that in the past that I don't think the full commission knew about the funds that were available. But
Well,
the
now they know.
yeah, the funds are used, for example, if we need folks to sign at events, and if there's a reason to have some accommodations for bathrooms in some locations, that we use the funds for that too. So, but they have access if they just want to say we know what they want, and we do the typical process of getting either a contract or something like that, we can do it. So.
Okay, well,
I think the question
I'm going to
is-
suggest then that what you guys want to do is have that as a regular agenda item for your meetings, and have Caitlin give you the report on what funds are in there and what they're being used for.
I will add one thing, that those funds are actually under the Public Health Department. And since we changed over, I don't know how to change it over to my department, or if that's something that's actually appropriate.
Okay,
So,
maybe you can chat with Melissa about that.
sure.
Do you know, Lloyd, about other communities, if they're, you know, if they were taking gifts and using them for projects, and what kind of projects are they using them for?
That I'm not aware of.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think I agree with Neil that you guys don't want to be handling that money.
Right.
But that, I think, as I say, we'll work on that language too, but I think you should put it on as a regular agenda item and ask Caitlin to report to you. on,
Okay.
Where it is, what's happening, how much it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so that will be worked on. So Section 6 is about meetings, and we are wanting to hold at least 10 meetings a year. We will need to change the quorum information, as you said, Ms. Heller.
Yeah, change to 9, a 9-member commission would be 5, and a 7-member commission would be 4.
Correct.
So
Just take out the.
let's think about quorums. This is your opportunity to give yourself a little more flexibility on quorums, especially if you're under 7 members. So do you really, if you're under 7 members, the way it's written, you're always going to need 4.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you're down to 5. Do you want 4 as your quorum, or do you want a majority?
Well, I've just gone through this actually, and I don't know, I would have to check with town council as to which rule applies, but I know in the case of the Climate Action Committee, where we are short one appointee from the Chamber of Commerce, so if anybody out there in the Chamber of Commerce wants to volunteer, please see me soon. But our quorum requirement is still the same, so we have.
Yeah, but that's in the absence of of a specific quorum.
But let's not forget that this commission, unless town meeting decides to revoke Chapter 40, Section 8J, continues to have to abide by the provisions of state law, regardless of whether we pass this.
But I think.
Does that specify?
Yes.
I believe it is.
Yes,
But
it does specify.
Okay.
So my point is
remember
that
we
if
talked
they have
about
a
this in
9-member
relation
commission,
to the
even if not all the seats are filled, if only 7 seats are filled, they still have a
What,
quorum of
Sandy
5,
remembers
if
what
it's a
the language is.
9-member commission. If it's a 7-member commission and only 5 of the seats are filled, they still have a quorum of 4.
So we should have town council look at the quorum issue, and because we're writing it, it's either 7 or 9, to make sure that if we're at 7, it is in fact 4, given that we have the state law. But yeah, okay.
No, I've done research on the state law. I know that it's 7 or 9.
So if our act says 7 or 9, and we happen to have 7 today, then we can have 4 as a quorum.
Yes, we would have 4 as a quorum.
I think we could set up 4 as a quorum for either 7 or 9.
No.
No?
you can't, no.
It has to be 5 for 9?
No, it has
Okay.
to be a majority.
Has to be majority,
And
okay.
that's the reason
Yeah,
it also
majority
needs
of
to be an
the-
uneven number, because it needs
Right,
to be a number.
okay.
Yeah, majority
Okay.
of the slots,
Right.
not the filled slots.
Majority of the,
Slots, so.
not just the filled slots?
Right.
Correct.
Okay, okay.
Gee, I'm wondering, because I remember we had a big discussion about this on the, writing the bylaw for the Diversity Commission, and I see Sandy here, and I wonder if you remember what the language is for the diversity.
Yeah, the difference
Of the
is
quorum.
that
Do you
commission is
remember?
not subject to
It's okay
state
if you
law.
don't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're,
okay.
we're boxed in here.
Nonprofit is a majority of the commission, people sitting in the office of the board.
Yeah, but with state law is a little different.
Okay.
So I think for this, we talk to town council, and
Yeah,
we'll get
okay.
some advice.
All right.
Yeah.
So I think that's it for the meat of this article.
And do you want to have the language in here, okay, special meetings can be called by a chairperson or any 3 members. Do you want that?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay.
Because if you have some long absent chairperson.
But it doesn't specify the notice. Does it specify notice?
It says
No,
notice of
yes.
meetings shall be sent to members
At least 14 days.
prior.
Oh, I see, right.
Really?
14 days?
Do you want that?
That's what goes before the email.
Well,
yeah, before-
we're now in email. Do you
Yeah.
really want, do you want to box yourselves? The open meeting law is 48 hours.
Yeah,
What-
that's an awfully long, big notice.
Yeah.
I mean, you might want to call a meeting within a week or something.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I don't know if you want, unless you have to have 14
Okay,
days,
yeah, I
it's
think
state
that's a
law.
good point.
I would suggest you just remove that sentence. You're subject to the open meeting law.
Right. Okay, just remove that sentence, okay.
And then I wouldn't even have meetings shall be conducted under Robert's Rules of Order in your enabling legislation. I would have that as just the way you operate, and I wouldn't have that in your enabling legislation. Because, then you get into fights over Robert's Rules of Order, and then,
Who the heck is Roberts?
yeah. You don't want to do that. And then commission procedures, 2/3 vote of appointed members,
Well, that's to change their procedures.
2/3?
Well, the procedures are kind of significant.
So, like, what's a procedure? Like what?
Whether they're going to use Robert's Rules of Order.
I've never seen that language in any other enabling legislation. I wouldn't.
Yeah, procedures are not designed,
Well,
they're not supposed to be
Yeah.
difficult to
No,
revise.
yeah.
I mean,
policy-
if you want to amend your bylaw, you actually have to come back before us,
Right,
come back
right.
before the advisory committee, and go to town meeting. You can't
Right.
just amend your bylaw on your own anyway. So, yeah, maybe that,
It's like, like our procedures, some of them are custom, a few of them are bylaws, but I don't know.
yeah, but if they're operating under these bylaws, they can't change them by their own vote.
No, but
It has to go back to town.
Even a
meeting.
procedure with,
Right.
you
the
know.
Yeah, if it's a
no,
procedure-
No, procedures are different, but
different,
they
yeah.
should not require a supermajority. They should require just a majority.
I wouldn't
because-
even have that in the,
Well,
I wouldn't have that in
you
the
can say
legislation.
that they will set up some procedures.
Yeah.
And, those procedures can be changed by a majority vote.
I would,
So you,
I would just take that section out.
well,
Well, you do want them to set up procedures
Yeah.
to, govern how they run meetings and,
Yeah,
what
but
But
they're
those
gonna
don't
do
have to
that-
be in the bylaws.
Doesn't have to be in the
Bernard,
bylaw.
and-
No,
and-
No, all this in
no,
the
but all
bylaws
you,
is just
all the bylaws
authority
should
to
say
make
is
those
that they will set
procedures.
up procedures.
Yeah,
That they
So
can then,
they need authority.
yeah, and they can amend
Commission
those.
shall establish procedures,
Period.
period. That from time to time may be amended or something like that.
Okay.
Or may establish procedures.
Okay, I can change it to just, as you said, commission shall establish procedures as needed and pass them by a majority vote, I think would be good.
Okay, so
Fine.
I'll take a stab at all this and send it back.
Oh, that'd be good.
And then-
That'd be great. Yeah.
This is a public hearing. Would anyone wish to speak to the Commission on the Disabled enabling legislation?
Oh.
Yes, ma'am. Speak to this warrant article.
Well, I saw something.
Please introduce yourself.
I'm Karen of Babcock, and I have sort of a disability too, and I ran across something for the fair market values, the MFR, and the reason why they are at the level they are is so that existing tenants can stay there. And I don't know how that's going to play in new buildings in terms of incomes.
I don't
and
think
not-
that has anything to do with this warrant article. This is the Commission for the Disabled, establishing the legal foundation for the commission, and I don't think we're dealing with market rents or market values.
Oh,
So,
okay.
do you have anything to say about how many people should be on the commission and the commission's powers and commission procedures? If you do, this is your time.
Okay, well, I've figured out the perfect urban planning book, and I really feel that the way that it does work currently in terms of tenant selection is good.
Okay.
I mean, I currently live in the United Nation building. We have like 50 languages at least that live there. And I don't know what to do about the lottery because many people want to move with me.
Okay.
And
Well, that has
that's
nothing to
really
do
good
with the
competition.
commission
So.
and disabled. Thank
All right.
you. Mr. Winkleman.
Hello. I'm here actually to confirm the unanimous vote of all the commission members in support of this warrant article. I want to thank all the select people for their healthy edits, and I look forward to moving ahead.
I appreciate your point of view. I do want to stress that although we seem to be tearing this apart, I actually commend you all for establishing a bylaw. I think it's a good idea, and thank you for the work, and we're just trying to make it better.
Yeah, we're trying to improve it.
Yeah.
And
you are.
And give you something you can live with. You know, just some of the stuff in here, like the 2/3 on procedures, you don't want that, believe me.
Agreed. Thank you again.
So
I'd like to say one other thing, which is that it's wonderful to see so much energy and life involved in the commission now. I'm really so pleased that you all are taking this topic seriously. You want to make improvements. You want to have a commission that works well, and that shows, I think, in your efforts. So I thank you enormously. I'm very, very pleased that.
Thank you.
the
It's been
commission's-
really a real pleasure, believe me. And I want to thank for all your suggestions. I take it for improvement and nothing else, really.
Selectman Franco.
I want to thank my colleagues on the Commission for the Disabled. One of my greatest pleasures in being a selectman is serving on the commission. I think we are poised to do some exciting things. This is the first step, and this is as much setting up some ground rules for how the commission is going to work as it is about gaining some publicity, something that Sarah Lynn said earlier in her presentation. We just want to let people know that the commission exists, it's open for business, and we want to provide assistance and help to anybody who may need to avail themselves of it.
I want to recognize your work too, Selectman Franco, because you were extremely instrumental in getting the commission reconstituted and going. So thanks a lot.
Okay. So we're not voting this one tonight.
Right.
In closing, Brookline is a great community for people of all abilities. Thank you for your help.
Sure. And the last warrant article tonight is Article 22.
Thank you, I now know the number.
Mr. Vogel.
How you doing?
Okay.
Let me write my number down here.
And by the way, could you, our packet has the numbering of the thing all screwed up, so bear with us as you
look in your book.
Oh, this book?
Okay. When it was copied for our packet, they kind of mixed the pages up, but that's our problem, not yours.
What number is it?
22.
At least the one I handed in wasn't all screwed up.
No.
Good.
No.
I would have been mortified.
So tell us about GAR.
So my name's Steve Vogel. I've been living in Brookline since 1986. I've known Neil for a really long time. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I'll stop you. The first thing I got involved with anything with the town was with Steve. It was the Lincoln School Extended Day.
Yeah. So anyway, wanted to thank the board for giving us this opportunity to talk about the warrant article, which is basically a warrant article for us to work on racial justice in town. The Government Alliance on Race and Equity, using the Government Alliance on Race and Equity framework, which, just for information purposes, Boston, the city of Boston, also joined the Government Alliance on Race and Equity network a little less than a year ago, which is part of what stimulated us. And I want to acknowledge that conversations about racism are always difficult. They make everyone uncomfortable. But discomfort is part of the price we pay and the way to growth, and we want to work together. We want to work with the selectmen, town administrator, the town meeting, the commission, Lloyd's office, to make the town a better place. And so I'm basically going to be just talking a little about how this whole process started, and then Ann Greenwald will be talking more about GARE itself. So this started about a year ago. A group of us first hearing about Boston. We started this process. We've now held 2 community-wide meetings where approximately 35 to 50 people on average attended each. We now have a contact list, a listserv of 100 people who are interested in working with us on this process. People who are interested in include members of organizations such like Brookline PACS, Workmen's Circle, and Brookline for Racial Justice and Equity, most easily referred to as Bridge, along with members from a variety of churches and synagogues in Brookline. Working for racial justice and equity continues to be essential and continues to remain a moral test of our society, all the more so since our recent election. Here in Brookline, we too are not free from bias. We all know that issues of race and equity have been raised in town, just as they have all across our country. We need to learn how to better address race relations and race issues. We want to have a productive relationship with the town in order to do this work without any blame or guilt. It needs to be a positive and productive way forward. Over the past years, we've heard from Brookline residents, town employees, visitors who report that they've experienced issues of racism in Brookline's classrooms while working for the town, using public spaces like roads and parks. Given our history in the U.S., everyone in the U.S. feels the effects of racism. Beverly Tatum, author of Why Were All the Black Kids Sitting in the Cafeteria Together in the Cafeteria, states that we all breathe the smog of racism. So how can we in Brookline not be affected in some ways? Given historic and current racial disparities, which include income, wealth, housing, and healthcare outcomes, it is clear that we as a society have not solved these problems yet. There does not need to be any overt racism or racial animus for current inequities to continue. We want to work towards racial equity by focusing on the fairness of town policies and procedures, but also looking at what the outcomes are of these policies and procedures. That's how we make progress. Unless we work for change, these historic inequities will continue to be perpetuated by well-meaning people carrying out what appear to be race-neutral policies. Our own racial biases can help obscure cause and effect and hide potential solutions. We have a lot to be proud of in Brookline, but like almost all communities in the United States, we have not adequately addressed these issues. We want a Brookline that treats everyone, its residents, its employees, people who visit or pass through. We want to treat them all with equal respect. We want a Brookline that works proactively to create equitable outcomes for all. And we'll talk about the process.
Hello. Can I fix this? Thank you for hearing us tonight.
You can just hold the whole microphone toward you. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
And introduce yourself.
Okay, yes. My name's Ann Greenwald. I've been a Brookline resident for the past 32 years. I've raised my 2 children here. They went through the Brookline schools. My daughter's here tonight, as well as my husband, who is a teacher in the Brookline schools. I work in the Boston Public Schools as a school nurse, and I am not usually a public speaker. It's not exactly what I'm comfortable doing, but I'm here tonight because I really care about this issue. So I'm really excited to bring GARE to Brookline because at its core, GARE helps decrease institutional racism and promote equity. It gives us tools to look at racial bias, which is mostly unintentionally, has been embedded in the policies of our country since its foundation. Brookline, like most of America, struggles with racial inequity. In my experience, though, Brookline has also been a community willing to learn and change as issues have arisen. With GARE, we have an opportunity to be leaders in advancing racial equity. The way GARE defines racial equity is that it is when race can no longer be used to predict life outcomes, and that all outcomes for all racial groups are improved. It's both a process and a product. So the GARE process first starts with building capacity to make change. To do this, the town leadership would create a plan to engage department heads to discuss the goals of achieving racial equity through the use of racial equity tools. As the department heads begin the work, they will receive leadership training through the GARE network from GARE trainers that will enable them to learn the process and engage with their staff. The assessment process that would first be used is data-driven and engages the communities most affected to identify problems, create priorities, and work towards solutions. The assessments will lead to the development of programs that create racial equity where it didn't previously exist. The ultimate goal of the GARE plan is that a racial equity lens will be applied to all decision-making processes in the town, and that we normalize conversations about race. I wanted to give one example of something that happened in Seattle, an outcome. Seattle started GARE about, several years ago. They were the first city to take on this method. So this is an example about teens in the criminal justice system. Teens of color that were charged with possession of drugs consistently showed worse outcomes than white teens. A primary reason was that teens of color were not showing up to court for their hearings. Letters were sent home through the mail to all the teens and telling them when their court hearings were. But the teens of color did not appear in court at a much higher rate than the white teens. So they got together a focus group comprised of teens of color to ask them why they weren't showing up in court. So they discovered that letters with official government stationery sent in the U.S. mail often went unopened in their homes, or that they had moved and their address had changed. The teens were asked about the best way to communicate with them. They answered that text messaging was their preferred method of communication. This is no surprise to most of us at this point. The court began text messaging all the teens with drug charges, and the teens of color began showing up in court. It turns out that the white teens also really liked being text messaged as well, and so it did not have any detriment to them. So that's one example of a way that a policy was not intentionally racist, but that it discriminated against people because of their life situations. So to start understanding how to begin the GARE process, we reached out to our contacts at GARE to ask a lot of questions. Questions were like what we were going to encounter the first year in terms of training, in terms of obstacles, and in terms of expenses. We've been acquiring a lot of resources and contacts to share with town leadership as the process gets started. So in summary, we were the town of Brookline became a member of GARE, and we are the first municipality in New England to join the city of Boston in signing on to GARE. We have a real opportunity here to be a role model for surrounding towns in working towards racial equity. Well, we still have a lot of questions. We believe that the town meeting's endorsement of this warrant article will help Brookline achieve racial equity for for everyone in our community. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm very interested in this, but I want to hear more about, and the resolution calls upon us to allocate financial support and other resources, and I want to hear more about what you learned about what's involved, what kind of training, what kind of expenses, because we're going through budgets now, so,
Yeah.
you know, if we want to allocate money toward this, we kind of have to know what it is. you know.
So the initial membership fee has already been paid in this previous fiscal year and
Right,
to
yeah,
the
Lloyd's,
current fiscal year.
Lloyd's department has
Yeah.
been involved in this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe Lloyd can answer this question better, like what kind of training and what kind of statistics would we be gathering? And do you have any sense of what expense would be involved in that you don't already have in your budget?
So
Why don't you let-
okay, yeah,
you let
go ahead.
Lloyd-
Well, there is a membership fee, an annual membership fee of $3,000 a year, which I budgeted in my it's in my my budget, annual budget. So that's the baseline, and then there are two different trainings that sort of initiate the process. Actually, when talking to Manny Howard, Steve, I got clarification on that. It's actually 2 half-day trainings, and each one of those are $5,000 each. And basically, it trains the staff to department heads about the GAP process, introduces them to the tools.
So all the department heads would have to participate in each of these half-days? Is that right?
That, I don't know the details about that. Do you?
Essentially, basically, in the way this operates, department heads have to get you have to get buy-in from the department heads to actually want to do this.
Right.
So once there is a critical mass of department heads, it doesn't have to be all of them.
Okay,
Once you have enough that it's worth spending the money,
yeah.
then you would have it. So
Yeah.
there would not be a requirement that every single department head has to lockstep do this.
Okay. I'm just, as we're going through budgets, I just want to know if we need money, how much it is, you know, so it can get into the budget.
And then, as a member, we have access to their consultant and actually their tools, and actually part of the whole network, so.
And what about the statistics gathering? Is that statistics we already have, and it's a question of pulling them out, or is it generating some statistics that we don't currently do?
I'm going to say yes to both of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, again, is there an expense there that?
One thing that there is statistics that you can gather data from that's already in,
Yeah.
you know, the town already has. But then another thing would be to do focus groups of certain groups of citizens, if you're looking at housing, or if you're looking at healthcare, if you're looking at criminal justice, whatever you're looking at, human resources, then you would have focus groups, and so I don't know how much of an expense that is, but
Yeah.
it could involve people's time and.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to suggest, Lloyd, that
Actually,
maybe.
and part of that, again, we have a budget for trainings and stuff too, so it's not like we're going 2 separate tracks. This money, some of the money that I have in my budget can actually be used to do this as well.
Okay, so I'm going to just ask you, though, to think about in the time between hearing this tonight and when we might vote on it, if you think you would need a supplement to your budget if we were to engage in this, because it, you know, if we have a warrant article that calls for us to allocate financial support, and we've already voted the budget and we haven't allocated any financial support, you know, then that's my concern, that we would say we were engaging in it, but not really engaging in it.
Mr. Kleckner?
I would just say that we believe that, well, you've heard the $3,000 is already sort of in the budget. We believe the training funds are in the budget, but we will confirm that before
Okay.
this board's vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
Selectman Green.
First of all, I think that the tool that is presented here can be a very useful tool. But I think there's some questions that we have to ask before we go forward, and that is, if we're already a member of this organization, what is the purpose of this warrant article? Right. Number one. Okay, let's start there.
You want to ask other questions?
Yeah, and secondly, there are a lot of organizations, both for-profit as well as non-profit, out there in the world doing the same thing. And why GARE? I mean, it seems like, well, Boston's doing it, why don't we do it? But, what is it that, causes you to think that GARE stands out? And what, what steps are taken to consider other tools that are available out in the market to do this? So my third question is, you also involve the school committee and superintendent of schools. I just wonder if that's something that
Can we do
Yeah.
that?
can we do it?
Well, town meeting can pass a resolution about that.
resolution.
We can't commit to anything.
Right.
The school department, by law, handles their own budget. We just vote the bottom line.
Yeah, this is saying
So we-
town meeting urges.
Yeah, but I just want you to know that we on the Board of Selectmen only speak for the town side of the budget. We don't speak
Yes.
for you need to go before the school committee and give them this information
Right.
as well.
Yeah, so,
It doesn't say urge anyway.
In the
Yeah.
now therefore.
In the resolves clause.
be it-
Oh,
Town meeting
urges.
urges.
Oh.
Yeah.
So all of this is not stipulating a requirement, but is urging the town to do this. So the reason why we're doing this, even though we're already members of GARE, is because, one, it's not unknown that municipalities stipulate that they will do things, have good intentions, but then there's inertia. So we wanted to take this opportunity to pass a warrant article to show the town that there's a lot of support for this, which a vote by town meeting helps to prove. Just so you also know, we are intending on continuing to do a petition drive to get residents to sign, to also further show how much support there is in town for this. So that's the main reason for the article, is in our reading of it, it's not stipulating that anything has to happen. It's town meeting is urging things to happen. And urging.
Yeah.
And why GARE as opposed to whoever?
Well, GARE is specifically a tool to address racial equity, and specifically to look at all the policies and procedures in, say, a specific department through a lens of where there might be unintended bias. And we did contact a bunch of different, several of us called a bunch of different places around the country that are using this tool, and we had a very good sense that they've made some really positive, concrete changes based on using the tool, so we felt like it was an effective tool.
So, in preparation for tonight's hearing, I took a look at the GARE website, and I have to confess I'm a little bit confused. And this is probably going to be a welcome comment for you, because I'm not going to ask the if question. I'm going to ask the how question. So we keep talking about GARE as sort of a monolithic single set of policies, framework for thinking. My understanding is that there's a bunch of different ways to implement the overarching goal of GARE. So Seattle's got a certain toolkit that they've implemented. Boston, I think, has a different toolkit. Chicago, Dallas, pick your other major metropolitan area, has done it a different way. What's the thinking about how we would do it in Brookline? Would we develop our own set of tools? Would we borrow from somebody that's done this before?
It's a good question. Essentially, what typically happens is once you're a member, then you start to have conversations with some of their organizers Once you're a member of the network, you have access to all the various tools that have been created by anyone within the network. You have access to ready communication with department heads in different cities, towns, et cetera, who can then offer experience of what's worked, what's not worked. There is no one tool that is specifically necessarily recommended. Many people have taken tools that are offered and then amended it to the needs of their particular community. And once this process starts, GAD network organizers can help facilitate us thinking about how to do that.
So let me throw that question to Lloyd. What's your vision on how, on the ground, we would implement this?
Well, the process starts with the trainings, and I should have added a little bit more. There is a lot of pre-training work that GARE does. They will be talking to folks in the community, talking to department heads, and get an understanding of what the needs are. Through that, they are going to come and, through those trainings, help us develop the tools and stuff using their templates and modifying to fit our needs. From that, the department heads and or organization, the town organization, will start examining, their policies, the way they do things, to look for barriers to equity, and then help us formulate goals and actually help us monitor our progress towards those goals. So.
Public hearing.
One thing I realized it never really answered your question, Bernard, on why GARE.
Yeah.
We kind of danced around it, but we never answered it. And for me, the answer is that it's a nationwide network that's working in at least 30 different municipalities and jurisdictions across the country. And from my knowledge, it's the widest network that is doing really solid, good work.
Okay, this is a public hearing.
Well, the biggest discrimination is economic.
No, I'm not recognizing you yet. Ms. Mortner.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Plout-Mountainer, town meeting member from Precinct 11. I just want to speak in favor of this. I want to also respond to a couple of the questions that have been asked. In response to Mr. Green's question, I think there are a lot of models out there in the world to tackle racism, and there are a lot of models that have to do with tackling the racism in ourselves and the kind of changing hearts and minds. That's one category of work. This is a really different category of work. This is the work about the nitty-gritty, as Ann and Steve said, the unintended consequences, the apparently race-neutral policies that in implementation actually the burdens do fall differently on people of color and white people. So it's really, I don't know a lot of other folks doing this, and I think this is really great work for us to take on in town. We've had a kind of bruising few years tackling racism, and it's gotten very personal and very accusatory about who's good and who's bad. And I think that that a lot of what we need to do about racism, tackling the way it shows up in our town, is say, we all may really have good intentions or race-neutral intentions. The impacts can be really different. And this provides a tool to really do that work, to look at the disparate impact, to borrow a legal phrase, the unintended consequences. A lot of the GARE website talks about where the burdens fall and increasing opportunity for everyone. So it's very appealing to me because I'm, like a lot of you and a lot of residents, felt like there are issues about racism we need to tackle in town, and the way we've been going about it the last few years, we haven't made as much progress as I would have liked. And so this is a really different strategy, and I'm excited about it for that reason.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say, we've been actually looking at GARE for about a year now. We first started by going to a racial summit at Northeastern University that was hosted by GARE. That's when I first actually became really in tune to what they were doing. and listen to some of the stories of the success that they're having. I think it's really important, too, that this isn't just a mechanism to point out faults in our system, but it's also to highlight the ones that we're doing right, and hopefully those are transferable to other departments and other things that we do. So I just want to say that this was a long process. We only became a member about 3 weeks ago, so it was through a lot of thinking, a lot of meeting with folks in the community to ensure that everyone's comfortable with this process. So I know my office is strongly behind this process.
Sandy Batchelder, I'm talking to you on behalf of the Diversity Commission. We've had several discussions about DARE and about the warrant article, and believe that it will be helpful to us in our work and support both the idea and the warrant article.
Thank you. Yeah, Selectman Heller.
Well, I've recently learned about this, and I too went on the website, and I have to say I am excited about it. I think it's an opportunity to do to look at things the way we do things and examine ourselves in a more neutral framework of what a goal we all want, which is to better serve the citizens of the town and to not treat people in discriminatory ways, no matter what race, ethnicity, et cetera, they belong to. And I think it's, I sometimes when you're doing things one particular way and it may not be all-encompassing and that it may not work every single way you want it to, you have to do something different. And I think this offers us an opportunity to do that, to make a change or to go in a different direction that could be fruitful. And maybe it won't work, but we'll never know if we don't try.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
No, I think this is very intriguing, the concept, and I think it could be very useful to us.
Yeah, to me, the devil's in the details. So I'll be...
We'll all be learning together.
Right, yeah.
Yes, this is what I'm trying. I'm Manny Howard. I'm speaking as a member of the public, and I've been in this. I went to the Boston Summit too and did a lot of research, and we're in the explanation to this article. They're quoting me because I called that the person out in Wake, in Madison, Wisconsin, to get her perspective. Started off in the health department, and they had their ups and downs and so forth. But the thing that's that I'll leave you with is that with CARE, we have an opportunity to speak to 30 or 40 different communities, and they're all evolving. They're all meeting different problems as demographics change, budgets change, politics change, and so forth and so on. And we have the ability to speak directly to them, as I was able to speak to the person out in Madison, Wisconsin, and learn from their mistakes and learn from their successes. And the town of Brookline has been a town for many hundred years. And the idea is to keep on growing and keep on learning and keep on improving. Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen.
Anyone else wish to speak? Okay. Then
So, to quote Elvis Presley, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I am just still a little concerned on the budget issue, because I think to do this right, we need to make sure that we are allocating enough to get this launched. Otherwise, it won't give us what we hope it will give us.
So I think this is great. I am not so concerned about the budget, perhaps I should be. I'm looking at the resolve clauses and wondering if they're too specific. I'm hearing from Mr. Howard that it takes a little bit of time to get your feet underneath you and to figure out how to implement it. There's a requirement here that we pick one or more departments in the upcoming, or the current fiscal year, the upcoming fiscal year, 2017, 2018, that we report to the commission once a month, and that it be in the comprehensive annual report. I'm just wondering whether we should take a year and figure out how we want to do it before we start putting these stipulations in a non-binding resolution. Maybe I just need to think through it more. Maybe it's appropriate, but that's sort of where my head is at right now.
Okay, I think that finishes us up for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.